Peace, 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 peace to everybody in the listening audience, on Facebook, on my Facebook page, and on my YouTube page. Greetings to all. And I want to thank everybody for participating in this special podcast. There's going to be some information shared that'll be useful and beneficial to all. Um, so, yeah, this is not something that any one of us want to miss. But the good news is, I understand that we have lives and things that we're doing, and we can't always make things according to the time that we want. So this will be recorded, and this can always be shared and played back anytime and rewatched. So that being said, I'm going to open up. Well, before I open up, I'm going to open up first. Hold on. Let me see. Let me just test and make sure this is actually live on my page. Let's see. Let me just go back. Yeah, just pardon me for just one moment. Okay. Okay. Now it says go live public. What's happening with the Facebook issue? View on Facebook. Continue to Facebook. Okay, what's going on with this Facebook live? I'm certain that some are probably on YouTube watching the live, but let me see. Y'all just bear with me for one moment. Okay, let me go back to the broadcast studio. Let's see. If there's any issue, to those that are listening now, if there is any issue with the live stream now as it is, we can quickly, let's see, start it over, and it should take really just a matter of minutes. Uh-oh, I'm hearing feedback. Okay, somebody came on YouTube. Hold on. Okay, Brother Wild Wolf, can you hear me clearly, or are you hearing feedback?
I do hear a slight feedback.
Okay, let me take care of that. All right. Can you hear me now? Or you still hear feedback?
That's quite a bit clearer, but it just a little bit of feedback still.
Okay, let me see something. I'm gonna remove myself from the stream. Hold on. Okay, can you hear me? Well, still hear feedback. Hold on. Let me remove this. Okay. You still hearing feedback?
That's quite a bit clearer, actually.
Okay. I'm hearing feedback on my end. So this is what we're gonna do. I'm going to, let me see, just one moment. I can mute this. All right. Okay, how's the sound? Wild Wolf, as well as those listening on YouTube, because it's streaming live on YouTube.
The sound on my end, it sounds fairly fine. I can hear. I don't hear any feedback.
Okay, so you don't hear any feedback?
No.
Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to get started. Let me see. So, Peace A. Cartman Jr., legitimate professor. Anif Stephen G. Peace. Okay, everybody in the house. All right. If y'all can do me this one favor, Peace Superhuman 37. Everybody said I sound clear and they can hear me clear, but I'm hearing feedback on my end. But nevertheless, as long as y'all can hear. Let me see what is this. All right. What I would like for everyone to do, if you're able to, is to share this video on your Facebook pages, or social media pages, because this is information that's going to be beneficial to us all. A lot of it, I'm quite certain, is information that none of us have heard before. And if in the event, Brother Wild Wolf,
Yes,
or
sir.
those in the listening audience, hear any static on my end, just let me know, because sometimes I hear static, but y'all saying it's clear. But as long as it's clear on y'all end, then that means it's going to be clear on the broadcast.
It's quite a bit of static right now.
Let me take care of this.
There was quite a bit of static just a moment ago.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Absolutely.
All right. That was much clearer. Okay. So let's get right into the heart of the subject. Well, as we open and we begin all things in the name of Allah, the God who came to us in person, Master Farad Muhammad, and who taught and raised a messenger for us, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, to bring us back into our own, our original way of living, our original way of diet, thinking, and mating. The messenger taught us that there were three major sciences that devil hid from our people that kept us subjected to the rule of others. That is the science of business, the science of modern warfare, and the science of mating. And this is the science of eugenics rather. And the good brother and the guest that I have on today, question. Okay, I know in on social media, Facebook, you're known as Wild Wolf.
That's
Should
fine.
I address you as?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Wild Wolf is fine.
Okay, got you. So the brother here, Wild Wolf, is someone that has a lot of knowledge on the subject of eugenics and the science of mating, and he has a lot to offer. We've built numerous times before this podcast on the subject, and every time we build, it's like, wow, this should have been part of the podcast. This should have been recorded. I can't believe we having this now. So we're having it now, and I want to introduce everyone in the listening audience, in my listening audience, to the brother Wild Wolf. We see me pull up these questions, and we're going to get started right now. Um, wow, there's so much. So we're just going to get started. Okay. So first question to the brother Wild Wolf. Can you please give those who listen an introduction of who you are, some of the things you do, and a history of your people and what they?
Indeed. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Yes. Greetings, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in this podcast on this subject, very important subject. I'll just say many people, or some people, or people know me as under the name Wild Wolf on Facebook and on some social media. I will keep it very simple. I'm a person that is very much interested and focused on knowledge and learning, not just learning for learning's sake, but for improvement, especially in the areas of marriage and family and culture and other interconnected things. As far as to who I am personally and who my people are, I'm a Maroon. And for those that may be unaware of that term or that name, my people are Maroons. Maroons are people that took their sovereignty, historically have taken their sovereignty or their freedom by war. My particular people fought uh, a war for over, say, about 70 or more years, and actually won a peace treaty somewhere signed 1738, 39, where they won their freedom from the British colonial government. And to this day, my people still have the lands that were recognized as theirs after fighting that long war. They still inhabit those lands to this very day and are still managing their affairs. Now, I want to put some context on that. 1738, 1739. That's before the United States, the settlers in the United States fought a war to get their freedom. So I want to put context on that so the listeners can understand that's my people won our freedom and the sovereignty before the United States even became a nation.
Mm.
So 1738, 1739, the United States declared independence or won independence, however you want to phrase it, 1776. So that's some context. So my history, my culture, my people's lineage is one of sovereignty and of running our own affairs, and also many other things connected as far as remaining free, running our own marriages, running our own families without outside interference on any level whatsoever. So hopefully that should answer that question. But I think the last part of the question, I'll give a few more details. So one of the things that interested me in participating in this podcast, as you had shared, Brother Noah, was we've had quite a few discussions and dialogue about marriage and family,
Right.
off air, outside of the public, and just this recurring subject came up about what do people do? What is the best practice, quote unquote, for marriage, family, and what is the worst practice, and how do you determine that? How do you get to that? What is the worst practice for marriage, family, mating, et cetera, et cetera? So that's part of why I'm very much interested in the subject, and have been for many years, and I'm looking forward to the rest of today's podcast.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We definitely appreciate that information that you share with us. And that's something that I'm going to look into. That's a history that I'm going to look into more of myself, because I'm aware of the Maroons receiving and fighting for and receiving their independence. But I wasn't aware that it was before the United States, as we know it now, is established as a nation. But not to digress or go off the subject, okay, can you give the listener a brief introduction into an explanation of what eugenics is?
Sure. And right before I do that, I'll just make a point. The Maroons didn't receive their sovereignty and their freedom. They took it by force,
Right.
by war. So
Right.
just a minor point, just want to make my particular people and many other Maroon uh, nations, because that's what we regard ourselves as, separate nations. We took it by war. We didn't march. We didn't ask. We didn't beg. We fought and won it by blood. But nonetheless, as far as to your second question about eugenics, So eugenics, some people may be aware, some may not be aware. Eugenics is a term. It's really a more recent term, recent historically, that has become used or known for representing selective breeding or selective mating or selective reproduction or production. However, eugenics is just a recent term. Selective breeding was always being done before that term even existed. So the term eugenics, not the concept or the practice of selective breeding, but the term eugenics, it's ascribed to being coined by an individual named Francis Galton, who in 1883, he presented it as a form or a viable selective breeding strategy in order to improve human populations. And part of what he was discussing or presenting was it was a viable way under the term eugenics to facilitate mating by mating people who were the most genetically fit, the strongest, the physically strongest or healthiest, and the most intelligent. So that's what he was presenting it as. But I must emphasize that as far as the term eugenics, that's the more recent term, but the practice of selective breeding goes back thousands of years and is completely disconnected from his concept or any other concept that came after him.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I appreciate that add on, that elaboration. I've pardon me, for the listeners in the listening audience, I'm actually covering my voice that I lost a couple weeks ago. No, it wasn't no coronavirus, just a regular seasonal thing. No COVID-19. But going back to the subject and to our featured guest, Brother Wild, question. Now, I know that you have information that you want to share with the audience. So at any given time that you want to share any bit of information, anytime. It could be at a point you wanted to or you intended originally or even not. But anytime you want to share some information on your PowerPoint or the screen share, just let me know, especially if it's brought up during one of these questions. But I already know that we prepared and went through. So
absolutely.
Yes, sir.
And if I may mention one more point or a few more points about the second question. So if we look at the term eugenics as basically a more recent term for what? Selective mating.
Right.
We would then realize that selective mating didn't start with humans. And when we say selective mating, we then have to go into nature. Why do I say that? Because there's many animal species that carefully select who they mate with so that they could continue reproducing the strongest and the fittest that gives their species the greatest chance to survive and thrive. So I always like to, when discussing mating systems, family systems, I always prefer to start in nature because that basically allows people to see that human beings did not come up with this idea of creating stronger, fitter people. Not at all. It happens in nature. And, so people shouldn't, when they hear terms that they think came from some nefarious source or it was used in a way that was wrong, oftentimes people make the mistake of believing or thinking that selective mating started with such incidents. No, it did not. It's in nature. It happens all the time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. Thanks for providing that information as well, because a lot of us, when we hear the term eugenics, or even if we hear selective mating, immediately the first person that comes to mind is Margaret Sanger, Adolf Hitler.
Right.
We just think of the negative things and the negative connotations that have been attached to it. And immediately our people seek to run from it. They think it's something that's evil. But in and of itself, according to my understanding and studies of it, it's not evil, it's neutral. It can be used to upgrade or even downgrade the people, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Selective mating can go in many different directions. So you're absolutely right. It's just like people have the discussion to bring it to more recent discussion to show how we should have a broader view of when we're discussing mating. There's a discussion that is constantly going on about gun control, especially within certain Western countries, such as the United States.
Right.
One side says ban all guns. Guns kill people. Another side says, well, guns are neutral. Guns can be used for self-defense. Guns can be used for hunting, if somebody's a hunter, I guess. And guns can be used for law enforcement to protect either, I guess, a community, if it's, community law enforcement, or to protect one's countries, the borders of one's countries, one's sovereignty. So if we look at that issue, we will take a broader view and say, no, it's actually not guns that kill people. It's how you use it. It could be used either positively, such as self-defense, to defend your country from invasion, or it could be used negatively, such as in crime, but it has nothing to do with the tool itself. Guns are a tool. Selective mating is a tool.
Right. Well, for that that explanation as well as elaboration, so that way we can clear up any of the misconceptions that identify with eugenics and selective mating. Let me see. Clarence Poole, peace to the God. Peace, Clarence Poole in the house. Hanif G. Okay. All right. To those that are listening from the 5%, from the Nation of Gods and Earths, from the Nation of Islam, this can be found in our lessons if we study them, if we know them, and if we understand them. All it takes is to go to question 28 of lesson 2, or as we could say, the wisdom build degree of the 1 through 40. And we have the science of mate selection pretty much all in there. Mate selection, genes, eugenics. In fact, the whole 21 through 40 deals with eugenics, if we understand. Actually, the whole thing deals with eugenics, and if we understand. But again, I'm going to give this back to the brother Wild Wolf and let him offer what he has to offer to the listening audience. Let's see.
And
okay,
I will just to give you a heads up, I'll have my presentation up in 1 second. I can take another question if that's fine with you. If you have another question before we get started, or based on what was already discussed, and I will have everything set up in 1 second.
Sure, not a problem. Let's see. In fact, I might just go into some of these questions and answers, so that way we can bring this to those in the listening audience that identify with this school of knowledge. If we go to 28 in the lesson 2, it asks, in what kind of rules and regulations, including all laws enforced, did Yaqub have while manufacturing the devil? Answer. Yaqub's first rule was to see that all his followers were healthy, strong, and good breeders. If not, he sent them back. All that he found that was not good in multiplying, and that they should marry at the age of 16. Right? Think about that. Next, Yaqub gave his people the law on birth control to be enforced while manufacturing the devil. That was destroy the alike and save the unalike, which means to kill the black babies and save the brown ones. This law was given to the doctors, the ministers, the nurses, and cremators. Man, the doctor's law was to examine all that married, and this was his law that anyone desiring to marry must first be qualified by the doctor, and in turn, he qualified or disqualified them to the minister. The minister would only marry the ones that were unalike. Now, I'm going to stop there. Those who know the lesson know what the rest of it, how the rest of the lesson goes, and then the next questions and answers after that. It talks about the grafting. It talks about the genes, the eugenics, the genetics, the devil's weak bone, weak blood, physical power, etc. But anyway, all of this, we can see this subject right inside our lessons. But going back to Brother Wildwolf, or Director Z, actually going into the next question, he actually went into the answer already. And this next question was, what, if any, are some misconceptions about eugenics that you would like to clear up for the listener? Well, I believe you already cleared that up in your explanation earlier. But if there's anything that you want to add to that, feel free. Just let me know.
Sure, absolutely. Well, there's quite a few misconceptions. I won't touch on them all, but some things. One thing is and I'm using the term selective mating strategically because a lot of people are so conditioned. They hear the term eugenics and actually believe that's where selective mating come from. So I know we're going back and forth on the terms, but I'm using selective mating to try to guide people's minds to understand that eugenics is not the original concept. Eugenics is a more recent term, but nonetheless, selective mating, it's a tool. The tool functions how the person using it determines how it functions. So there's nothing wrong with it. And I'm gonna give quite a example of that to show that that's what it is. So that again, when people hear mention of selective mating, you into gathering up a whole group of people because you have problems with them and doing harm to them. No, not at all. So nonetheless, different people use tools differently. So one person can use a screwdriver and use it to go kill somebody. Another could use a screwdriver as a tradesman or a tradesperson. So that's a clear example. It's a tool. It's dependent on who's using it. Also, the people using different tools are different. So be aware of that. Someone that is dealing with, let's give an example, gardening, growing crops. One person their type of gardening, they may use artificial chemicals that poison you. Another person may use natural fertilization. So we have to also realize that when we're talking about selective mating, you can't just judge selective mating. You have to talk about who is utilizing selective mating. Now, going to answer the question even a bit further, during the American eugenics movement in the United States, there were people that had other people's worst interests at heart, and they would utilize certain things such as sterilization techniques and tubal ligation, or stopping people's fertility for different reasons. Some of the people or the groups that were promoting quote unquote eugenics in the United States, some of them had ulterior motives, which was basically to harm other people. Yes, but I'm just again giving the point. That's not all the way across the board. Let me give a clear example. Some of the people that were, and I'm not taking a side, I'm just making a simple point yet again. Some of the people that the American eugenics movement promoted for things such as sterilization were people that were convicted criminals. And in that, we could imagine a rapist. So I'm giving an example here and adding some context. So if we're talking about selective mating, let's come up to 2020 right now. I would imagine that many people would be in favor of sterilizing rapists today, showing that selective mating, if you detach it from what some people that had negative or ulterior motives were doing, you could see that it still has a role and a place today. I will go even further. Some of the people that back then, the American eugenics movement, which I'm not an advocate for or against, I'm just making a point. Some of the people that some of those organizations back then promoted that they said they were unfit for mating were people that were drug addicts. Let's come up to 2020 right now. I surmise that even in 2020 right now, July 2020, many people would agree that drug addicts should not be mating and producing drug-addicted children. So I'm just using those examples of how some of the basic principles of selective mating cannot be tied to any group or any people's desire to harm other people. It's universal. And when I say universal, it's always been occurring. It always is occurring right now outside of human societies in nature. So if we're able to, Brother Anor, I am ready now, sir, to do the share of the PowerPoint. I can go ahead and get to that if that's fine with you.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Let me know when you see it. I'll do the screen share, and please let me know.
Will do.
When you see the screen.
Give me a second. Just a moment. I'm getting on myself to okay.
Sure.
I'm getting back to the broadcast studio. I was checking to see if I could because it's not currently live. It's not currently live on my page. I think I have to update the settings on my Facebook page, but it's okay because it's on YouTube. And there are those that can share it on YouTube, and plus we'll probably do more like this. But anyway, whenever you're ready, because I'm back in the broadcast studio.
Sure. Please let me know if you can see my screen. And do you see a green tree?
Oh, hold on. Let's bring you in. Should be in the guest. Okay. Let's see. Yes, we can see. Yeah, screens within the screens. Yes, sir. But we see your screen.
Do you see
there
the
green it goes. Screen? Yes, sir. There it goes.
Okay, wonderful. And please, throughout, if anybody can let me know if somehow something goes awry, that way I can make any sort of adjustments. All right, so this is a brief PowerPoint I put together to sort of provide the core, the essence of the subjects that I wanted to talk about. In addition, of course, we're going to be here to take quite a few, any questions anyone may have. So let's get to it.
Okay, quick question, one thing. Before we get started, do you have like the, let me see do you have like earphones in or earplugs? Do you have like a mic or a speaker rather in the back? Because I think I'm hearing a little bit of feedback.
Yes, sir. I have a microphone on.
Oh, okay. But we can hear you good. It's not that bad. It comes in and out. But whenever you're ready, we're ready.
Sure. Okay, wonderful. So selective mating, we want to define and also provide a few strategies on the subject. That's what this PowerPoint is for. And I would advise anyone listening or viewing, get your questions together, write down your questions, and please make sure that your questions are geared completely to what is being presented. Also, even if we're not able, which we're not, to answer every question, contact information will be provided at the end or throughout this podcast, and definitely at the end of the PowerPoint, so that you can reach out and ask further questions if you have them. All right, so a mating system. We want to start with that there.
Okay, real quick. Yeah, we're getting a little bit of feedback. If you can, you might have to turn your the output down just a little bit. So that's probably what's the feedback we're hearing. But we hear you loud. It's just with a little double sound.
Sure. Let me go ahead and see how I can adjust my sound, right? Correct? Give me 1 second.
Yes, sir.
Let me turn my output down just a little. Is that better?
Yeah. Good.
Okay, that's better. Is that clearer?
That's much clearer.
Okay, wonderful. All right.
Oh, it
So
just came back, but okay, continue. It's not that bad.
sure.
Let's go.
Okay, so I will go ahead and begin. So we want to talk about mating system to understand selective mating. A mating system can be defined as a group reproductive strategy. And we're going to further define it as like a coded system, something that is set, it's organized. It's like a formula, an algorithm, something that you follow. And with that, that mating system would be the entirety of everything that affects reproduction. So why is that important? Oftentimes when people talk about mating, they think they're talking about a mating system, but they're actually not. They're talking about either their individual behavior or one aspect of a mating system and presenting that as a mating system. And that's a form of atomization. Now I'm gonna give an example of that. A tree, if we were to define a tree is every single part of the tree: the root, the trunk, the fruit, the leaves, the bark, the branches, everything including and between. That's what a tree is. So if we were to discuss a tree, we couldn't talk about the tree from just the root or just the fruit and ignore all the other parts. So I just wanted to emphasize that. And look, similarly, we could say even a car. When we're talking about a car is a car if you're talking and addressing all of the parts. If you take off the carburetor, if you ignore the carburetor and remove one part of the car, such as the carburetor, that's no longer a car. It's missing a vital part. So that's just a point. Now, within a mating system, some of the purposes of a mating system are to ensure the species survival. Very, very important. A mating system is not for recreation. It's to make sure that species, whichever species in question, obviously, is able to reproduce itself. So give me a second here. I see on my screen. I'm going to just make sure everybody can see the whole screen because this is okay, here we go. That should be fine. All right. So part of the purpose of a mating system is to ensure that a species can survive. So when we are talking about mating, we need to make sure we keep that front and center. Is what you are talking about ensuring your species survival, or is it stopping your species from surviving? Secondly, another purpose of a mating system is it has to be or can be defined as technology. There's hardware parts of mating system and there's software parts of mating system. Okay, they all play a role.
Wow, for you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
sound like wait. Can you hear me? Make sure that's not my mic.
Can you hear me?
If anybody can hear, okay, let me see.
Can you hear me?
Okay, I hear you now.
Okay.
We hear you.
What part did I drop off?
You dropped off where you said last part that I caught where you said that, I'm paraphrasing, it wasn't for, you said it, wow, you said so much.
It's not
for recreation. Not just at the same time.
It's not for recreation.
Right. That's, yeah.
Right. So I'll pick up from that. That's fine. When we're defining a mating system, we should never use recreational behavior to define a mating system. People's or choices or preferences. A mating system is something that's set. And the purpose of it is not recreational. It's to make sure that species survives, evolves, gets better, can adapt to its environment, et cetera, et cetera. So within that, we can also define a mating system as a form of software. And that software helps to implement the precognitive program. what do we mean when we say the precognitive program? Birds are already programmed. Their genes are already programmed before they're even hatched to fly. That's already in their genes. So that's not something the bird sits there and say, you know, I want to mate with a bird so that I could fly. No, it's already programmed. It's already internal. So that's part of being a bird and whatever else. So that's part of what we need to remind ourselves. Is your mating system implementing what your species is designed to do?
See.
Which has nothing to do with your conscious thought. Lions are already programmed to be lions. They don't go to lion school. So oftentimes people are engaging in behavior that has nothing to do with what their species is designed to do in this environment at all. Now, so with that said, also the life cycle is the mating system, whatever mating system in question or being discussed, is it keyed into your life cycle? What do I mean when I say that? Many animals don't mate they don't have children throughout the year. Let's give an example. Some certain species of bears hibernate. So their mating system shuts down at a certain time of the year. Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah. I think that might have been my mic.
No worries. All right. So I was just making a point. I'll pick up again. The last thing I was just mentioning was we want to make sure we also remind ourselves or be aware that mating systems, part of their purpose is to also facilitate the life cycle, whatever the life cycle system is for each species.
Yeah.
Some species of bear hibernate. They don't have children throughout the year. They're already programmed at a certain time of the year. If we're talking in North America, certain species of bear in North America, when the temperature drops below a certain level, going into the fall and definitely into the winter, certain species of bears stop everything. They hibernate. You know what that means? They stop mating. So I'm just giving an emphasis of that, of some things to consider as we go through this PowerPoint, so we can ask ourselves, are you even practicing a mating system, or is that just your recreational behavior? Is your mating system tied to the seasons? Like animals' mating systems are? Or is it just random, just whenever you just... Nonetheless,
I already know where he was going.
We shall continue. Just checking, making sure my PowerPoint is still visible. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It's still visible, perfectly clear and fine.
Okay, wonderful. I'll continue. All right. Let's get the next PowerPoint window. We want to put down some definitions, at least present some definitions. So, evolution. Descent for our purposes, selective mating, descent with modification from pre-existing species, meaning there's change over time. And we'll get into what kind of change. Cumulative, meaning accumulated. Inherited change, meaning whatever these changes are, and we're talking about this in the context of selective mating, in a population of organisms through time, leading to the appearance of new forms. The process by which new species or populations of living things develop from pre-existing forms through successive generations. Why am I presenting this? Because within mating, even mating evolves. So, for instance, if an environment has certain things occur in it, and normally the species in that environment made a certain way, they would adapt. They would have to evolve if those changes were affecting or preventing them or making it more difficult or making it more challenging for them to mate. They would have to adapt to even the mating system to be able to meet and to surmount whatever those changes are. So even within mating systems, there has to be some form of adaptation or evolution to ensure that the species can survive. To ensure that the species can survive. I'm going to give a clear example of that in modern terminology.
Yes, sir.
HIV. That's something, however, I am not discussing where it comes from, so please don't even suggest that. HIV is something that, at least the way it is operating in the human populations, it could be said that's a more recent change in the environment. So now people have to make an adaptation when they're dealing with HIV or many of these STDs that are popping up. And they have to be even more scrutinous about getting people tested to see if they're infected than they would ever have before. I'm using that as an example of how the introduction of so-called new or more widespread occurrence of STIs or STDs could force changes in mating habits. And if you don't change, you will more than likely, of course, get infected, and more than likely your species won't survive if you refuse to evolve and adapt to overcome whatever that challenges in the mating system. So I'm just using that broadly for evolution. Mating systems have to evolve to ensure species survival. Moving along. Mating systems can also be described as I mentioned a few minutes ago, group reproductive strategies. So again, oftentimes when people are talking about mating, they're talking about individual strategy or individual preference. It's a big difference. Group reproductive strategy is something that an entire group, I'm not describing how large or small, I'm just making a point. It's something a group adapts and passes on. And it's geared towards whatever's occurring in the environment. And that adaptation is inherited, passed on. And then once it's passed on, a new branch or a new generation follows that adaptation, and then you have diversification. So now, I know the term evolution can be described in many ways. I'm only discussing two types right here. Positive evolution in terms of mating, which we're presenting, creates stronger species if it's positive, and it ensures species survival. And then we're also discussing negative evolution. So even negative evolution is a form of evolution. And we're arguing and will present evidence that that produces weaker species and it facilitates species extinction.
Yeah.
So let us continue now. So two things now we're going to go into. Give me a second here. All right. Now, to continue from that, from the last theme of evolution, natural selection. And this is a simple definition. An evolutionary mechanism that occurs when some individuals of a population are better able to adapt. See that word, that key word again? Adaptation to their environment and subsequently produce more offspring. Nature, in effect, selects which members of a population are fit to survive long enough to reproduce. And I'm using that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Real quick, I just wanted to check. Yeah, he's getting some more feedback on your end. I'm hearing double. Okay, those in the listening audience, let me just make sure, because maybe it could be my mic and me hearing double. If you are hearing double, just comment or say something in the comment section that you're hearing double. If it's clear, just say that you're hearing everything clear, and then we can just continue. Because if it's coming clear on your end, that means it's being played clear, it's coming clear in general, and when I listen to the replay, it's going to be crystal clear. Yeah, anybody in the comment section, just let me know if it's clear, if you hear it clear or not, or if you hear feedback, rather. Okay, so continue on, Brother Wawa.
Sure. So nonetheless, from evolution, or along the lines of what was just discussed in terms of evolution, we arrive at natural selection. And that goes right back to the definition in front of everyone. That's when certain individuals, you notice it said individuals, it didn't say the whole group. They are better able to adapt to their environment. And because of that adaptation, positive adaptation, they're able to produce more offspring or stronger offspring. And that allows them to survive and pass on those adaptations to their progeny. Some individuals of some groups adapt better than others and will survive, and others of the group will not survive. Moving along. Now, so with that said, natural selection, we're coming from evolution, natural selection, adaptation, and now we arrive at this key term here. Now, in terms of mating systems, we're going to get very definitive here. There's many ways to describe mating systems. We're selecting really just two right now. Random mating. And I put in caps, not caps, but in brackets, sexual communism. Why? Look at the definition. Mate selection in which all individuals have an equal chance of being selected. There's no conscious discrimination for or against any trait.
Wow.
This is an example or discussion of a mating system that anybody can gets a turn, just like a doorknob.
Wow. Interesting. Okay. The people said they hear you just fine, so maybe that's just my mic. So yeah, we can proceed. But thanks for the feedback, everybody.
Sure. So random mating, that is a type of mating system. Now, I'm going to give an example of random mating. Everybody is watching. I'm going to pull this YouTube video up. We're going to start at 8:11. I'm going to click on this. Can you still see me, Brother Noah?
Yeah, we see your screen.
Okay, give me a second here. It said restrict. You need to. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Is that bad, huh?
No. I mean, it's a YouTube video of a dog, actually. So a dog's. So I'm trying to get this up. Give me a second here.
No problem.
So I can try to get this off of here, because it's pretty key. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Hanif G. He said both of us were loud and clear.
Sure. Okay, so let me try to just pull it up, just completely off of YouTube. I'll just type in this name and see if it will allow me to just bring it up. I have it all keyed up, but for some reason it is not allowing it to come up. All right. Okay, give me a second. I believe this is it here. So I'll go ahead and pull that up. Okay, it requires payment to watch. Okay, I have no clue what that is. I'll go ahead and just do a Google. Give me a second here. Okay, I'm going to try to just get it randomly off of here. Hopefully you can still see my screen. Give me a second.
Yes, sir. You see your screen.
Got you. So this is it right here, and I'm going to play it. I'm not going to go through the whole video. I just wanted to make a point, because the point, okay, this is not letting me watch it. Okay, all right. So, everyone, when you get a chance, look at that video. Dogs on street chase female in heat. This is a form. I'm using this video. I'm attempting to use a video as an example of random mating. Meaning there's no conscious discrimination. Why? Because when you look at that video, and for those that know the mating system of dogs, in this video, it's showing that in an urban setting, a whole bunch of dogs of different breeds. I mean, they got every big, small, just all types of breeds chasing down one female dog.
Wow.
All at the same time.
And what is the name of a female dog? the term used.
No discrimination whatsoever. They're all chasing the one female dog. It's about, I don't even know how many. The dog pack, as the video goes on, the dog pack just keeps growing and growing and growing. And then all various ones are trying to mount the female dog.
So
and
basically,
are biting
dog.
each other.
Yeah, my fault. Go ahead.
And it gets so but this is the behavior of random mating. One dog tries to mount her, the other dog bites him. The other one comes in after those two are fighting, trying to get. This is random mating. There's no discrimination. It's just raw instinct. It's not even. There's no instinct. It's obvious because there's different breeds of dog trying to mate with a completely different breed of dog.
Wow. Ain't that something?
All fighting at the same time. And even after at the end, even after one dog finally, gets into the act, one male dog with the female dog, the others stand around waiting because for those that are aware of dog mating, the dogs will get, they will get coupled for a while. The male dog's, genitalia swells up in the female dog to prevent to give as much chance for fertilization and to prevent the other dogs from being able to be obviously number 2, number 3. But I'm making a point. Even while the male dog and the female dog are stuck together, the other dogs sit around waiting for their turn.
Damn. So dogs are cuckolds, basically.
That it's random mating. Random mating is, you see how you just use that term? That's a more recent word for what we're discussing, the scientific phenomena.
Wow.
So the term, as he said, cuckoldry, which it goes back quite a few years. It's been around for a while. It's not recent in terms of 20th century, not at all. But it's still relatively historically recent. Yes, so there's random mating cuckoldry is a form of random mating.
Wow.
Recreational sex is a form of random mating. Promiscuity is a form of random mating. It's all promiscuous breeding. Prostitution is a form of random mating. Why? Because one individual is waiting. I guess, don't ask me. I have no knowledge of this. I've read and studied. But nonetheless, prostitution is one or two individuals. It could be 100 individuals trying to mate with the same female or male, whoever, I guess. Because there's no conscious discrimination for selecting for any trait. It's just about ejaculation. So nonetheless, that's what that video is about. So I imagine that the listeners in their minds could say, hold up, it's all sorts of things could go wrong with that random mating because you can catch STDs. There's no checking for that. There's no checking for anything. It's just basically savagery, if we want to call it that, but just impulse, poor, low impulse control.
A bunch of squirrels chasing a nut.
That's, again, we're discussing mating to show that there's different types of mating, and part of discussing that different types of mating means there's different types of species. So with that, I will move on. So that's random mating, no conscious discrimination. Now,
thanks for that.
Sure. Now, the second aspect of mating we're going to discuss right now is non-random mating. Non-random mating. We're going to show in nature how that occurs. So non-random mating we're defining as restrictive mating, selective mating. And to define that, mate selection based on one or more traits. You're selecting for one or more traits that are discriminated for or against. This is a mechanism of evolution. In other words, evolution, part of what makes evolution possible is where during mating, those that are mating say, hold up, that's a problem. Can't mate with you. Hold up, you don't have the traits that's necessary. Hold up, you look sick. Hold up, So Non-random mating is mating that is intelligent design.
Mm.
It's not off of pure impulse. It's thought, intelligent design and planning. It's engineering. Big difference. And that's one of the mechanisms that make species evolve. So I know that's a lot, but I'm going to go into it.
Yeah, please do.
I'm not going to go into it with this video because I don't want the same problem to happen. But this video where you see now is giving examples of non-random mating where it's intelligent design. Rams in the video I put up, it's on YouTube. Hopefully the listeners get a chance, they'll see it. Canadian Rockies ram battle for mating rights. What this video shows is how one ram comes up and tries to mate with a female. The female is standing next to a male. That male turns around and sees him coming and attacks immediately to contest and to protect his mating rights.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, that male is not going to be allowing random mating. And that's programmed into these rams. You'll see it on the video. So what is being done? What's some of the things that's happening in that video? That shows that certain animal species, such as the ram, select. You have to earn the right to mate, the privilege to mate. They select according to your fighting ability. You have to win the right to mate. You got to engage in combat, displays of strength, strategy, and durability, because these contests of fighting for the right to mate, they're not 5-second contests. It could go on for a long time. In that video, it was just going on and on. And that is a mechanism for evolution. How? The strongest will win the right to mate, and the weakest or the losers won't. And they'll pass on those strong genes. Another example of non-select or non-random mating that is on the PowerPoint, peacocks. Peacocks, they select for mating by the ones that are seeking to mate. They display themselves. They show off their plumage, their tails, and then the female selects according to quantity, size, and the distribution of the tail, the colorful displays on the tail. Now, an ignorant person would look and say, "Oh, that's just a show." No, they've done experiments that showed the males that were selected. They did experiments, scientific experiments that proved that the males that were selected that had the more, prominent tail or plumage or coloring were bigger at birth and better at surviving in the wild than the offspring of birds with fewer or less prominent displays. So this is not just the birds are sitting around and showing off. No, the birds are already programmed. The female birds are programmed to know what constitutes the fittest males to select. Moving along. So I'm using these two, the rams. There's numerous others, but I'm using these two to illustrate how in nature there's selective mating. And if we prefer the term, there's eugenic mating in nature that has nothing to do with people. It's occurring all the time. Humans don't control that because it's already designed to be that way. Nonetheless, we shall continue now. Now, we want to give some examples now.
Yes, sir.
We gave the examples of animal random mating with the dogs just chasing all the different breeds of dogs, running and slopping all over each other and biting. And that's
man, I wish you was able to see those videos. We will. Just all we got to do is just everybody listening, just go back and, if you want to see those videos, go back and review those links. They're definitely there.
Sure. So
take notes.
I gave the example. Go ahead, brother. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think was this a comment or question? This is from Legitimate Professor. I'm going to bring it up on the screen. Let me see. Just a moment. Okay. I wanted this from a legitimate professor. Can you see it, Brother Wild Wolf?
I'll look at it right now. Give me a second. I'm going to go over to this screen yard.
Oh.
You can address. Okay, I wanted to know what it is about when the selection is based on finance, like in certain cultures with monetary arranged marriages. Okay, that's a good question. That is included in what we're doing, but I will address it very quickly. Finance is just another way of saying resources. So if we're going to use finance, we need to get away from fiat currency because you can't eat paper money. So finance, what does that really represent? It represents ability to gather resources. So if we go into the more primal or the more atavistic state of resource gathering, that would be hunter societies. So finance has now come to represent what would typically be in a hunter-gatherer society, your ability to go out there and hunt if you're in a hunter-gatherer society. Or if you're in an agricultural society, your ability to till the land, farm, and produce crops. So that's what finance represents. That's what people, that's what females predominantly would be selecting for when they're expressing they want a man with a certain amount of finance that would be able to support a family. They're expressing what would normally be expressed in a hunter-gatherer society or agricultural-based society, where the female, before marrying a man, her father would look and see the man's skills. Is he able to hunt? Is he able to farm? And if not, then that would be the answer, no. So I want the conversation to go beyond finance, because you can't eat paper money. So what does the finance really represent? Those skills, the skills to provide the basic resources you need: food, clothing, shelter, and defense. So hopefully that answers that question. And I have just a slight bit of that we're going to go into as we go along through the PowerPoint. Thank you for the question, sir. Now, to get to the point now about human random mating, because we showed the random mating and how degenerate it is among the dogs and other species that engage in random mating. Can you imagine how many STDs is being spread among those dogs?
Wow.
Who's the father? How would you know? Everybody gets a turn. So let's give some examples of human random mating, so we can all be aware if we're engaging in random mating. So for simplistic purposes, we're going to define human random mating using things that people may recognize quickly. Sex recreationalism, meaning people taking sex as a recreation activity, and it's not. It's designed, it's for the purpose of making sure your species survives. There's nothing recreational about that. There's nothing more serious than that. Nonetheless, promiscuity, human random mating expresses itself through promiscuity. Extramarital sex, meaning people sleeping with people that's not their spouse. Prostitution, human random mating, pimping, whoredom. These are some of the terms that can be used as synonyms for human random mating. But let's go a bit further into this. Let's look at the outcomes, the negative. Is it negative or is it positive? We're presenting that human random mating is always negative. You notice I said always? Let's give some examples. It results in low IQ. This is the argument. Of course, facts are coming after this. This is the argument. Human random mating that is not intelligent design produces low IQ. It's a form of low IQ commerce. Typically, it doesn't produce responsible male family leaders. It results in poor selection. It results in extremely high rates of STIs and STDs, sexually transmitted infections and diseases. Human random mating, meaning nobody is concerned about does this person have an STD? How many STDs have they caught in the last month? Human random mating typically results in unmarried pregnancy because it's just random. Illegitimate children, and you see that list: unmarried parenthood, fatherless households, juvenile delinquency, child and teenager membership in criminal organizations, crime-ridden neighborhoods, poverty-collapsed communities, chronic illiteracy, ignorance, poor communication habits, processed food diet, physical unfitness, extremely high rates of overweight, obesity and morbid obesity, smoking, alcohol and drug use, no impulse control, predicate criminality, high crime rates, intergenerational poverty, degenerate culture, no family estate. Now, I said all that to say, look, that's a tall order. That's a whole lot right there. But can that be demonstrated to be true? Absolutely. You can look at the link that's there. Give me a second here. Let me blow up this screen again. I have it smaller, and I think part of it is cut off. Anyway, the sources, there's so many sources. We could be here for days. I'm not going to waste time. So I gave two sources to validate what is being mentioned. The first one is an article. It's a comprehensive article that discusses a comprehensive study. It's called The Consequences of Single Motherhood. Just go to that article and, you'll see the many factors that have been found to be produced by random mating. People just sleeping together, not married, no type of scientific process, no type of medical testing, nothing, not married. You'll see all those factors, or many of those factors that I just described, being iterated in that article that's talking about a study. Also, the second source on there, it's cut off, I apologize, but what that second source says is the rise in single mother families and children's cognitive development, evidence from 3 British birth cohorts. That's a very recent study. It's a huge study that shows random mating. Single motherhood is another form of random mating. Because there's no discrimination. People say that's discrimination. Look, we're going to get into it. Discrimination is not saying they like the way the person looks. No. Discrimination, if we're talking about selective mating, discrimination is STD testing, knowing your family background, criminal background check, ability to provide for a family. The list goes on. That's what selective mating is, or discrimination. So going back to the point, that second article shows, it goes in extreme detail, showing that single motherhood, or another form of random mating, has a negative effect on children's brains. It has a negative effect on children's brains.
I hope everybody's listening to this and paying attention and taking notes also. Take notes. Get pen and paper, pencil, paper. Please take notes and review the information that's shared in this podcast.
Nonetheless, single motherhood is being proven in these 2 articles that are there on your screen to harm children. Scientifically proven. Again, single motherhood is one form of human random mating. It has been proven, not just single motherhood, but all forms of random mating. But since we're talking about this form, single motherhood has been proven to be a form of child abuse. Because it harms children. It abuses children. There's not even an argument. Now, moving along, but we don't want to just highlight on single motherhood. All forms of human random mating, promiscuity, extramarital sex, sex recreationalism, prostitution, pimping, whoredom, they generally produce the same negative outcomes, just to different degrees. They don't create high IQ populations. Far from it. They create the reverse, low IQ environments. Moving along. Now, So that was human random mating, non-random mating. This is human non-random mating, which is restrictive and selective mating. Now, this sort of addresses what the gentleman asked earlier. These are examples of human non-random mating that people may not be aware. Virginity, abstinence, and celibacy until marriage. In other words, cultures and societies that require you cannot have premarital sex. You have to marry the person before you have sex with them. That's a form of intelligent design and restrictive mating to get the best possible and the most fittest candidate for mating before marrying them and having children. Arranged marriage is another form of non-random mating. Non-random mating, yet again, is restrictive and selective mating, intelligent design. Or if you prefer, eugenic mating, arranged marriage. Marriage education and preparation, that's another example. Remember I spoke earlier in the podcast talking about mating systems have software components and hardware components?
Yes, sir.
Marriage education and preparation is a software component. You're being trained mentally on how to act and what the expectations are and all your responsibilities before you even marry, before you're even allowed to marry. So that's a software component. Moving along, and virginity, abstinence, and celibacy until marriage, that's a hardware component. That's a hard restriction, stopping you from physically doing something. But I continue. Premarital medical physical exams and genetic disease testing. Premarital medical physical exams to see if your body is in proper working condition. That's a hardware component of mate selection. Genetic disease testing. That is we got to go to it. That is such a advanced form of selective mating and restrictive mating. That means practicing that form of human non-random mating, you can find out who in a certain population has genetic diseases, and you could just avoid the next generation, at least in your family, from having it by just checking their family history, getting actual scientific DNA testing on them to see if they carry any negative genetic traits.
Yeah.
Also, marriage contracts and certification. The gentleman just a few moments ago asked about finance. Sir, this would fall in that category. Meaning that is a form of identifying who is fit. There's different levels of fitness: mental fitness, physical fitness, genetic fitness, financial fitness, economic fitness. Again, financial and economic fitness is a representation of the hunter-gathering ability or the agricultural ability to farm. That's all it is. So this would fall within that. Fitness, determine the fitness if you are able to provide, protect, lead, etc. These are examples of non-random mating because this takes a high degree of intelligence to execute these things, to make sure these things are continued in a society, generation after generation after generation. And if people violate this form of human non-random mating, there would be, let's use the term, I'm going to coin a term right now. The term I'm going to coin is called DEBO, D-E-B-O. Please write that down, DEBO. What does this term means? And I'm not just saying that to just be humorous. That term means a restrictive form of mating if people violated the mating system. Let's define it. Disownership, D-E-B-O, disownership. E, exile. B, banishment. And O, outcast or outcasting. So I'm using the terminology, an acronym to describe some of the ways that human non-random mating cultures and societies would control their mating system from violation. If there was violation, you would get deboed.
Wow.
Disownership, exile, banishment, and outcasted. Now, moving along. So with human non-random mating, what are some of the the examples of the results. Genetically healthy populations or groups. Those type of mating system are more prone to eat healthy diets, to be physically fit, to have a higher IQ, generally speaking, as far as group, to have a male family leader, a lifetime male guardianship of female relatives. We don't want to go past that. These mating systems, especially the human non-random mating, typically for the most part, one of the major things behind those mating systems, where it's restrictive and selective, is males guarding over their female relatives and controlling and preventing their female relatives from having sex outside of marriage, and also being ready to execute the law of their society upon any males that try to violate that.
That's right.
So that male guardianship of female relatives, that is a hardware form of a mating system, meaning the males that are the relatives of their female, that are the guardians of their female relatives, are empowered to use physical force to stop any savage, beast-like, uncivilized males from coming and violating and trying to engage in random mating with their female relatives. But I digress. I move on. Arranged marriage. You'll find that to be a common occurrence. And arranged marriage is planned. That's what arranged marriage really means. It means it's planned. It's not random. Random mating is not arranged. So we could keep it very simple. Arranged marriage is planned. Just like you plan to brush your teeth. Nonetheless, intact and progressive ancestral culture, that's another feature or product of non-random mating. Morally upright, lifelong marriage and stable family, societies that have intact family estate, they have land, economic empowerment, and high culture, etc. These are being presented as some of the outcomes, the positive, progressive outcomes of non-random mating. Again, non-random mating is what some people would term to be quote unquote restrictive selective mating, aka eugenic mating. Now, of course, we will not fail to provide evidence. So let us move on and get more into the PowerPoint, and then we're going to provide a wealth of evidence for anybody that, for whatever reason, would like to get more information. Now,
can I, before we continue, I just want to read one comment, a new one, and if you want to add anything to it, or is this my first time reading it? Actually, this is from KT, and he says, let me see, bring it up. He says, and we maybe can say that the promotion of single mothers in a target population is a form of warfare, since it relegates the target population inoperable over time to resist intelligently attack.
That was a statement or a question?
That's a statement.
100%. Sir, that made the statement. You're right. All mating is a form of war. So if I go, listen very closely to what I'm about to say. If you go to a society or a culture or even a family and they don't engage in premarital sex at all, that's not in their culture. And you, whoever that person may be or entity or group, introduce prostitution and pimping, whoredom, pornography, recreational sex, single motherhood, you are waging war against that family. That family has the right to wage war against you. They don't need to ask any question. They don't need to declare anything. In nature, as I gave the example, I so wish that YouTube video came up. That video I made reference to, where I showed with the rams, the the non-select mating, where the rams are competing. One ram came up and tried to mate with the female. The female was already accompanied by another male. That male didn't even hesitate to attack. So, sir, that made the comment, yes, even one attempt to try to engage in premarital sex with a person's family, that family has the right to wage war against whoever is trying it, because that's an act of war. In nature, you are going to get attacked. No discussion, no negotiation, no can we reason, you get attacked. So I'm mentioning that just to remind, we are in nature. So there's things that people get away with in the artificial construct called industrial society, and they think that's normal. Go try that in nature. And when I say nature, I'm going to be very clear. Leave the quote unquote industrial societies. I'm not telling anybody to do this, but if you are crazy, then so be it. And go to a traditional society and go try to engage in premarital sex with one of their women and see what will happen to you. So, but to the point that the gentleman made, yes, it's war. So we should never talk about single motherhood or prostitution or pimping or whoredom or strip clubs or pornography or promiscuity or extramarital sex. We should never talk about these things like, oh, it's a choice. It's not mine, but it's the person saying it says, oh, it's just my preference. No, you're waging war. And now because you're waging war, you deserve war to be waged on you. Moving along. So be aware and don't complain. Now, when you reap what you sow. Now, with this next slide, this slide is going to now go into the depth of the information that's already been presented. This slide, these next several slides, is going to bring out the fullness of how do we know all these things other than what we have presented. The name of this slide is The Source of Human IQ Development, High Culture, Civilizations, and Advanced Societies. Is restrictive/selective mating. What this slide is arguing is that this is the source of creating better people. You have to restrict the mating pool. You have to control the mating pool and direct it intelligently to produce better people. So let's get to that. Restrictive mating, which entails suppression of random mating. In order to create higher IQ, high culture, advanced societies, you have to suppress random mating and degenerate breeding. You have to create a standard of excellence for what mating is, but not just mating, everything in your society and your family and your culture. That has to be the standard. Excellence. And also any sort of rewards or awards in that environment has to be based on merit, not based on just who you are or who your family is. It has to be you earned it. Now, let's go a bit further in that. This historian named Arnold Toynbee observed, quote, out of 21 notable civilizations, 19 perished, not by conquest, not by war, by somebody outside force, not by conquest from without, but from moral decay from within. And that's the source that this is quoted from. So what does this mean? Someone could still be on the fence saying, what does this mean? This isn't really clear. Well, let's get clear now. Let's get a bit more clear. There's a book I strongly urge. In preparation for this podcast, I could not include, as I was sharing with Brother Anor, I could not include even 10% of the information I have. It would just be overwhelming. All this is already known. It's been studied. It's been researched over hundreds of years, centuries. But I say that to say, I'm giving just a few comprehensive sources that anyone can go to verify what is being presented. There's a book called Sex and Culture. In this book, this professor studied 80 quote unquote uncivilized cultures, whatever that means, and compared his results with 16 quote unquote civilized cultures. We're not going to argue right here what civilized means from uncivilized. We're sticking within the point of the PowerPoint. What is the point of the PowerPoint? Civilized from uncivilized? Random mating and uncivilized, and non-random mating is civilized. So that's our point. So for us, for the purpose of mate selection, uncivilized is random mating, prostitution, sex recreationalism, stripping, whoredom, single motherhood, etc. Civilized mating or civilized cultures are ones that practice non-random mating, intelligent design, arranged marriage, virginity, abstinence, celibacy until marriage, male family leadership, etc., etc. So nonetheless, I digress. This professor studied 80 uncivilized cultures, quote unquote, according to him, and 16 civilized cultures extending over the last 4,000 years. So this is not just some simple study. This is a mega study, 4,000 years of data. He found that, in parentheses, like when lifelong marriage or restrictive marriage was practiced, the society attained its greatest cultural energy, especially in the arts, sciences, and technology. But as people rebelled against the prohibitions placed upon them and demanded more sexual opportunities, random mating, there was a consequent loss of their creative energy, which resulted in the decline and eventual destruction of the civilization. Remarkably, he did not find any exception to this trend. What this means, and you see the source right there, so you go look it up, go get the book. What this means in very succinct language is, he studied Professor Unwin and found that without exception, when any civilization allows people unrestricted sexual misconduct, random mating, instead of that civilization directing its energies to being creative and building and being, bringing things to a high level, they degenerated into just turning into a bunch of dogs chasing after and they deteriorated. So that's 4,000 years of study. Be aware, 4,000 years of evidence, but that's not the only one. There's another quote here that references Professor Unwin's study. Unwin's conclusions, which are based upon an enormous wealth of carefully sifted evidence, may be summed up as follows. This is a categorization of human societies. All human societies are in one or another of four cultural conditions: zoistic, manistic, deistic, rationalistic. Of these, the zoistic, zoo, Z-O-O, but it says zoo. Nonetheless, zoistic displays the least amount of mental and social energy. That means they have the lowest IQ. Guess why they have the lowest IQ? Professor Unwin found that because they're spending all their energy not creating, just running around randomly sleeping with anything. The rationalistic is a society that there's a place for mating, but it has its place. That's not the whole entire purpose of life. So the rationalistic is the one that places more restrictions on mating, non-random mating, intelligent design. In other words, then the rationalistic would be societies that ban what? They ban premarital sex. They punish you if you have premarital sex. They exile you. They ban unmarried parenting. They ban all things that detract from the gene pool. But I digress. Continuing on. Investigation shows that the societies exhibiting the least amount of energy are those where prenuptial continence, premarital sex is what that means, is not imposed, and where the opportunities for sexual indulgence after marriage are greatest. The cultural condition of a society rises in exact proportion as it imposes prenuptial and postnuptial restraints upon sexual opportunity. In summation, what both of these quotes, these different sources are stating from Professor Unwin's study. And there's many other studies, but for purposes of time, there's no way I was going to be able to present this all here. But this is a very meta study right here. In summation, scientific studies have already been done to show why some societies are regressive or dysgenic and some are progressive and eugenic. The societies that spend the least amount of time developing and cultivating the mind and education and healthcare and technology are the ones that are spending the most amount of time in random mating. The societies that tend to evolve at the greatest level, at the fastest velocity, shall we call it, are the ones that put the most restrictions on mating and prevent people from just running around randomly sleeping with everybody. Those are societies that would prohibit or punish adultery, prohibit or punish prostitution, prohibit or punish whoredom. The list goes on. Societies that would prohibit or punish having illegitimate children. Those societies are the one that this scientific study has found, and many others, are the most advanced. I shall continue.
I just want to add this real quick before you get to the next point. If everybody's listening, to everybody that's listening, this should make us have a greater appreciation of the restrictive laws of Islam that Master Fard Muhammad brought to us in America about, not limiting, but banning fornication, adultery, other things in the restrictive laws, even laws that's found in some of the texts, sacred texts or texts we consider sacred, that put restrictions on those, on marriage, on not just marriage, but sexual behavior. It puts controls and limitations on that. We see the science behind it if put into practice. So this should make us have a greater appreciation for that which we already have, but may not have understood the value of it and where it could get us if we put into practice. That's all I wanted to say.
Indeed. So again, to recap, many things that people think are started in religion or religious texts, they didn't. Mating starts in nature. So oftentimes when people hear or they discuss certain things, even though it may be a practice in a particular religion or culture, it does not start there. And they make the mistake. People make the mistake of not thinking there's a scientific component for those practices.
Right.
And think it's just, it's your preference or your belief. No, no, no. So when people hear about or read about or think about or taught or learn or study laws, any laws, it doesn't matter where the laws are, such as no adultery, no whoredom, no prostitution, no recreational sex or sex recreationalism. People make the crucial error thinking, that's religious laws. No, it's not. It's scientific laws. It could be proven. That study and everything I've presented in this PowerPoint is geared to show this is scientific. These are scientific practices. Mating is a scientific practice. So don't make the mistake, the error of thinking it is, it's your preference or it's your religious belief or your philosophy. None of the above. All this has already been proven. And we're going to continue. So, but nonetheless, yes. And when people are discussing issues such as single motherhood or child illegitimacy, it is a scientific reason for not doing those things. It destroys the mating pool. It destroys over time the genetic fitness of the group. There's already been scientific studies, which I pointed to a few studies in this PowerPoint already. There's been numerous studies that shows non-random mating destroys gene pools.
Right.
Excuse me. I apologize. Let me change it. Random mating destroys gene pools. Non-random mating, which is selective restrictive mating, evolves gene pools. That's how you create a superior, stronger group population.
Wow.
With that said, moving to the next PowerPoint, we need to be very aware that we're not practicing random mating. Some people could be practitioners of random mating regardless of what they believe because they have incorrect, unscientific ideas. What are one of those unscientific ideas? Some people may think that everybody deserves to mate. No, nothing could be further from the truth. That's sexual communism, the idea that everybody deserves to mate. No, that's the worst way to mate. Now, with that said, constructive mating is that which practices whatever that precognitive mating system is and adapts, of course, which procreates and perpetuates a species gene pool. That's what we're defining as constructive. So if it's not doing that, it's not constructive. Now, be aware, this point I just made a minute ago, neutral. Some people or some mating systems are just neutral. They are not going forward or backward. They're just stuck. They're just stuck. They're not growing. They're not regressing. That would be neutral. Now, why am I saying this? It doesn't harm the gene pool per se. Now, why am I saying this? Is that possible? Yes, because there are people that really have no business mating. Some people should never be married. Some people are never mature to be married. They will never be mature enough. Some people are not fit to be married. Some people are too irresponsible to be married. Some people don't even want to take care of children. So I'm giving examples. This false notion that sometimes is uttered that everybody deserves a mate. No, they don't. Who told you that? Do all ants get to mate? No, they don't. Some ants are worker ants. That's their role, that's their purpose. Every ant doesn't get to mate. So I'm mentioning that so this could be understood. This unrealistic expectation people have of, oh, something's wrong with you if every single person is not married. No, everybody is not able to be responsible in a marriage. Everybody is not responsible to properly care for children. The thousands upon thousands of foster care homes where children are routinely abandoned testify to that. The thousands upon thousands of abortion clinics testify to that. The thousands of group homes where children are dumped like trash testify that everybody shouldn't be mating. Everybody shouldn't be married. So I'm just making a point of that. Some people or some individuals within a mating system just should play a neutral role. They should just contribute to the mating system, work, enjoy life, but you shouldn't be mating. Moving on. Now, deconstructive practices within a mating system is whatever disrupts that mating system and destroys the gene pool. That's one of the things we see ever in increasing amounts. You see people having child after child, unmarried. You had one child and you were not married. You compounded it by having another one and not married. Then went after that and compounded it again. How's that helping that group, that your group, your species group, by doing that? When we see all the evidence shows that's absolute insanity. You are sabotaging your group's future. You're creating a legacy of poverty, of criminality, of juvenile delinquency, of fatherless homes, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm giving a point where oftentimes people have this ridiculous notion, oh, no, that's your behavior. That's not a mating system you're practicing. That's not a mating system. That's your behavior. Random mating, or should I say deconstructive mating, is something that breaks down a natural mating system. It doesn't add to it. It doesn't add anything positive or progressive. Moving along. So be aware of that. I just wanted to mention that so that we could look and see, hold up, are people playing different roles within a mating system or things? Yes. Constructive, neutral, deconstructive. Are you constructive? Is your species better because you mated? or is your species worse off? Moving along. We want to get into this section, and I'll move to, I know we've been on for a while, degenerate breeding.
Yes.
Degenerate breeding. We talked about a few things of that earlier with the random mating, but let's get into it to show that in order to limit or prevent or suppress degenerate breeding, it is necessary. Let me rephrase that. It is absolutely necessary to suppress, to prevent, to punish degenerate breeding. Why? Because degenerate breeding has a greater ability to reproduce more genetic diseases in the population. Let's give examples of that. And when we say degenerate breeding, we're just using it in the general terminology, meaning this thing is going to break down and cause worse outcomes, negative outcomes in the population. Let's continue. Degenerate breeding. This is an example of degenerate breeding. And when we say degenerate breeding, we're not necessarily saying that people intend to do that. It's just the mating system that they're practicing is not sufficient. It's not selective and restrictive enough. This excerpt is discussing, I'm not going to read through the whole thing. This is discussing the Amish community in America. And speaking in this article is describing how they have a rash, an epidemic of genetic diseases that cripple a lot of their young people now, and it's getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
And I'll read this part. 3 of the 5 Miller children, for example, have a mysterious crippling disease that has no name and no known cure. Their father, Bob Miller, says he realizes there's a crisis in the community. In other words, this is not just something that just happened. When you have 3 children out of 5 that have a crippling genetic disease, something is scientifically wrong with that mating system. Moving along, the 3 Byler sisters were all born with a condition that has no cure and mysteriously leads to severe mental retardation and a host of physical problems. Last year, doctors figured out that the girls have the gene for something called Cohen syndrome. There are only 100 known cases worldwide. So let me back up off of this. Whatever this group of Amish are doing, I'm not saying all the Amish. I'm being very specific. Whatever this community or family of Amish are doing, it is destructive to their gene pool. Remember, when we're talking about degenerate breeding, we're not saying that people intend that, because no parent would intend that, obviously, but they haven't adapted. They haven't realized that they need to monitor their mating system and make sure they have a diverse enough gene pool in their mating system. Let me give more context to this. Matter of fact, I'm not going to give context. I'm just going to read it and then I'll elaborate on it. The genetic problems that are happening in the Amish community come down to something called the founder effect, because the nearly 150,000 Amish in America can trace their roots back to a few hundred German Swiss settlers who brought the Amish and Mennonite faiths to the United States in the 18th century. Over generations of intermarriage, rare genetic flaws have shown up, flaws which most of us carry within our genetic makeup, but which don't show up unless we marry someone else with the same rare genetic markers. In summary, the Amish population is too small to have diversity, and they don't know that. And the way they are finding that out now is among their smaller population of their people, of their culture, these genetic diseases are popping up just all the way around because they have too small of a group to mate with, literally speaking. Not just that. This could also potentially be prevented by doing genetic testing before people marry. So you can find out who carries whatever markers or negative genetic traits and prevent them from marrying. The Amish clearly are not groups that are into too much modern science. So even though they, of course, no one would wish this upon their children, it doesn't matter. If you don't know genetics, if you don't practice genetics, if you don't stay aware of genetics, and I'm not just talking about clicking up a YouTube video. No, I'm talking about in-depth information where you educate yourself, or forget educate yourself, where you need to get educated. Let's say that. Don't think this is only the Amish this is taking place. There are many other groups that are having severe genetic diseases pop up in great numbers among their group. Another group, matter of fact, you know what? Let me not go there. Let me finish this and then I'll elaborate on a few other groups. Nonetheless, Carnes and Miller admit these conditions have gotten more widespread in recent years, so much so that concerned families pulled together, held an auction, and raised enough money to build a clinic within buggy range of all the Amish. They also hired a pediatrician and researcher named Dr. Henry Wang to start caring for their children. You see what the name of the article is, right? Genetic disorders hit Amish hard. Let's rephrase that article. That article can be said, failure to practice eugenic mating hits Amish hard. You see how that sounds different?
Hmm.
So not knowing or being ignorant, staying ignorant is deadly. And the Amish, we want to make this point. The Amish are not a group of people that practice the negative random mating like everybody else in American society. Even that is not enough to protect you. The Amish believe in marriage for life. The Amish don't believe in sleeping around. The Amish don't believe in prostitution. The Amish don't believe or practice any of the other negative things typically that we hear about. Even that's not enough to protect you if you're not protected, if you're not practicing selective mating and even learning about the genetic makeup of your group. So this is an example, and I want to elaborate on two other groups. There's several other groups that are getting absolutely huge numbers of genetic diseases within their populations. One of them is the Pakistani Pakistani people over in Pakistan, and also especially in Britain, where they practice cousin marriage, or close marriage within their groups. Absolute tsunami of genetic disorders among British Pakistani community, and also over in Pakistan also. Another group that also has a tremendous amount of genetic disorders in their children is certain populations of Orthodox Jews. Huge numbers of genetic disorders and genetic defects in a large percentage of their children. So I'm making a point to illustrate anybody can be affected by this. Anybody that does not practice thorough, exhaustive, non-random mating, scientific mate selection, restrictive mate selection. Where does restrictive mate selection come in to prevent genetic disorders? Whoever carries those traits, I know a lot of people are not going to hear this. We don't care. We're dealing with science here. The future of the species is what is important here, not a person. If we're talking about actual restrictive mating, then you have several choices. You can tell people that practice those, that carry those traits, negative traits, look, we can't let you get married. Because if we let you get married, the incidence from what we see happening in your family is so high, we don't want to continue those disorders and defects among the group. I'm just saying, a lot of people may not want to hear that. Too bad.
Yes, I'm glad you stated that, because, and we spoke about this before, some people will put their feelings, they're looking at this from a feelings perspective. We're dealing specifically and strictly with facts. We're not trying to offend anybody, but at the same time, we're not watering down facts with feelings. We're dealing with strictly facts. This is nothing personal.
Right. And thank you. And let's keep it simple. Does everybody deserve to fly a plane? Is that what you're saying now? Is that what you all are saying? You see how that flips? You see how that whole way of thinking flips around now? So
right.
Anybody that believes everybody deserves to marry and mate and reproduce children, you are practicing random mating, which is sexual communism. The equivalent to show you the ridiculous, the unscientific nature of what you're saying, I'm reversing it and saying, then according to that, everybody deserves to fly a plane. Do you see how insane that sounds? Because you know everybody's not competent to fly a plane. Everybody's not fit to fly a plane. Everybody's not educated enough to fly a plane. Everybody's not trained enough to fly a plane. Everybody's not certified enough to fly a plane. Everybody has not been apprenticed to fly a plane. Everybody's not employed as a pilot. So how in the world could you make a statement that everybody's fit to fly a plane, but let's reverse it and go back? Then how in the world could anybody even have the unmitigated gall and the perturbed nerve to say you can't stop people from mating? Oh, yes, we can. Yes, some of us are doing it right now. Yes, we can. That's what produces the fittest. You stop those that are unfit to whatever degree from reproducing their unfitness. So, but nonetheless, we shall continue. So there are various groups that are being affected by genetic diseases within their population, and it's extremely serious. Now, we shall continue. This is another example of what would constitute degenerate breeding, different from the one we just read or discussed, but still, this one is just as serious. Incest. Now, the average person here in incest would say, oh, well, I mean, that's common sense. No, incest is another example. Laws on incest cannot be relegated to simply religious laws. No, incest laws are scientific. That's why people made laws and cultures made laws against people committing incest. Incest is marrying people that are of near relation or near kin to you, because they observed over time that genetic defective children will be born. So incest is a scientific prohibition. It is a scientific law. But let's get into this. That's a form of degenerate breeding. The Habsburg family. Anybody that has a chance, go look it up. It's tons of evidence. They came out with the research, and they did very recent scientific research and facts that determined that the Habsburg royal family, which is one of the most prominent royal families in European history, they were engaging in incest or inbreeding, marrying their cousins and near relatives, and it made over time genetic defects occur in the children that were born. Look at the chins. You see the chins? Look at their chins. It started making their chins elongate. Over time, people used to look at the family, the Habsburg royals, and wonder over history and wonder why are their jaws so long. Science has recently identified that due to the inbreeding in the Habsburg royal family, that inbreeding, marrying relatives that were too close, caused degenerate conditions. It caused their genes to keep passing on into the children and made it worse over time. And you see it in the physiognomy right now in the jaw, but there were other defects. There's so much on this, but I couldn't for limitation of time. Nonetheless, let me make it succinct. Eventually, the Habsburg family went extinct. You know why? Because the last Habsburg royal, which was a king, could not reproduce anymore.
Wow.
He was infertile.
Wow.
So their whole lineage went extinct because they were practicing inbreeding. In this form, it's incest. And when we say incest, I'm going to have to qualify that, because some people may say, well, we don't practice incest. Yeah, let's test that. Incest is not just a person marrying their mother, or like a son marrying his mother, or a father marrying a daughter. No. Or uncle marrying the niece, or an aunt marrying a nephew. No, incest is also inclusive of marrying cousins. That's part of why the Pakistani genetic defect epidemic is occurring. They do cousin marriage. And again, I couldn't include everything, but for those that may think cousin marriage does not increase the incidence of genetic diseases, you have another thing coming. There's already been studies done showing cousin marriage increases the incidence of genetic defects. So for anybody after this podcast that may want further information, look, there'll be an email and contact information given out at the end of this PowerPoint. Just send an email. No problem. We'll be more than happy to shoot you the sources to show that. But nonetheless, so this is an example of a family, a royal family. Are you listening to what I'm saying? Royal family. They had the money, they had the power, they had the politics, they had everything. They practiced dysgenic or degenerate breeding, and they're now extinct. So money can't protect you from going extinct. And many people are on their way to extinction and don't even know it. Many families are on their way to extinction. How do you know you're not practicing incest? How do you know this? Did you get genetic testing? Did you even check the background of the person you married? That's common practice in a non-random mating or selective mating to check the family history. But nonetheless, let us continue. Another aspect of degenerate breeding or type of degenerate breeding. Remember earlier when we started this podcast a while ago, I mentioned about a mating system, and I used the term a tree and said a tree is the sum of all the parts. And I gave the other analogy that a car is the sum of all the parts. If you remove one part from that car, like the carburetor or the wheel, is not a car anymore because a car is the whole package. Nonetheless, a mating system is a whole bunch of working parts. It's not just somebody marrying somebody and sleeping with them. No, there's things that affect mating and things that affect mating. So diet is a primary thing that has a tremendous impact on reproducing children and health and genetic health. So poor diet 100% can result and is an expression of dysgenic or degenerate breeding. How? Let's get to it. Obesity. Let's get to it. Poor diet, which produces negative health outcomes like obesity. Comprehensive evidence. There was a study called the Pottinger cat study. What this Dr. Francis M. Pottinger did was he studied a bunch of cats. It was a controlled study, a gigantic one, I might add. And some cats, he fed them totally raw diet, which is the norm. That's what cats eat. All species have a native diet, by the way. I'll repeat that. All species have a native diet. So he fed the cats, one group of cats, their native diet, totally raw, and did all type of, operations on them to see what would happen. It says, this excerpt from the study is, he noticed that the cats that ate the all raw, their natural diet, their natural species diet, they continued in good health generation after generation. They had excellent bone structure, freedom from parasites and vermin, easy pregnancies, and, they acted like cats. Look at the second paragraph. All of the groups whose diet was partially cooked developed facial deformities. When it says facial deformities, they came out born looking, with their faces deformed, not looking the way their faces would normally. In other words, their face didn't develop the way it normally would, of the exact same kind that Price observed in human groups on the displacing foods of modern commerce. Narrowed faces, crowded jaws, frail bones, weakened ligaments. So he noticed these cats were exhibiting, the cats that he fed the unnatural diet that the cat don't eat, were exhibiting deformities that he observed in human groups that started eating the modern diet. They were plagued with parasites, developed all manner of diseases, and had difficult pregnancies. Female cats, hold up, let's see. See, I'm something's blocking my view, so I want to make sure I read all of the parts now. Let me make sure I'm pulling up my other screen. I don't want to miss that. There's a key word there that I don't want to miss. All right, give me a second here. Give me a
Sure.
second. All right, here we go. Give me a second. Let me pull it up. All right, now, female cats became aggressive while the male cats became docile. Did you hear that?
Look at that.
I will read it again. The cats that
Please do.
fed, the cats that this Dr. Francis M. Pottinger fed the unnatural diet. Not only did they have deformed faces, their bodies didn't develop naturally. Their faces, jaws were crowded. Weak ligaments, frail bones, plagued with parasites, all manner of diseases, difficult pregnancies. In addition to all that those cats that ate the unnatural diet, in addition to all those defects, it says the female cats became aggressive while the male cats became docile. Think about that deeply. Where do you see that happening?
Look around, look around.
Meaning it's showing, in this study, he found that the diet affects the genetics of the group. And he noticed the similarity between the cats that ate the natural diet and how they kept their natural disposition and health, and the cats that he fed the unnatural diet, and the ones he fed the unnatural diet started acting unnatural, like the unnatural people that ate the unnatural human diet. Aggressive females and docile males. Moving along, after just 3 generations, young animals died before reaching adulthood and reproduction ceased. This study was a huge study. To my understanding, it's the largest study of its kind ever done like this, on cats especially. In this study, it only took 3 generations for these cats that were fed the unnatural diet to go extinct. They couldn't reproduce anymore. They became sterile and infertile. So this idea of mating, when people are talking about mating, we could clearly see they're not going to this depth. Even your diet is a part of your mating system. But we shall continue. We're going to do a summary on all this, obviously. This is a book. If you are able to, go get this book. This is a book written off and juxtaposing quite a bit of Dr. Pottinger's findings. The name of this book is called Pottinger's Prophecy: How Food Resets Genes for Wellness or Illness. I'll leave that book up there for 5 seconds. You can go up and it will show you in that book the just tremendous effect that food has on your genes. So that's a part of the mating system. Moving along. Degenerate breeding, and we're still in the poor diet. These are some of the countries. Look at the effect that poor diet / obesity, overweight, all the other unnatural diet activities are having on certain countries. I couldn't put every country on this list, but look at the list. The numbers that you're looking at, just to give you a heads up, is the numbers of the population of these societies that are obese. Do you see what the number 1 country, if I'm pronouncing it right, Nauru, do you see how much of their population is obese?
Wow, that's high.
That's extinction level. That's extinction level. That's Pottinger's cat level. Palau. And by the way, a lot of these societies are Polynesian societies. Polynesian societies. The next one, Cook Islands, 55.90% obese. You know what this shows? Nobody's at the wheel. Nobody in that society of any amount is regulating the mating system. Again, your diet is a part of the mating system. This is what happens when you don't have people that are educated in selective mating. Look at the Marshall Islands, 52%. And it just keeps going on and down, on and on. Look at Kuwait. One of the areas in the world that obesity is exploding is over in the Middle East, in the United Arab Emirates. But look at on the list, Kuwait. They have Kuwait as number 11, 37.90. What is it? 37.90% obese. This is nothing but absolute insanity. And of course, we have to include the United States, 36.20% obese. Look, if I couldn't emphasize this enough, please go get the Pottinger study. There's a whole study. It's just gigantic, and you will see poor diet is, what's the word I will put this? It's a form of degenerate mating, because you're destroying your body, and when you reproduce, more than likely the children are going to be born with defects that are transmitted from you destroying your body with that poor unnatural diet. It's a form of child abuse. Poor diet is a form of child abuse. And any society where the men have intelligence, high intelligence men, I might add, that don't operate on feelings, any society or family of men are well within their rights to ban anybody that's obese in their family or society from being married. 100%. It's about the gene pool. It's not about you. It's about the species, not you. So if you don't have enough discipline to change your diet, then you shouldn't be mating. Why are you mating? You want to create unhealthy children, gestational diabetes? I mean, but nonetheless, you all get the point. Diet is a part of the mating system, and maintaining poor diet is a form of degenerate breeding. So the takeaway from this is don't marry anyone that is obese. Don't marry anyone that is overweight. And if you have a family, make sure that your family is on a mandatory physical fitness regimen. Make them work out 3 to 5 days a week. Mandatory. Make that the family law. That's part of the hardware when it comes to mating selection. Make them work out. Weight-bearing exercise, calisthenics, push-ups, sit-ups, running, stretching, mandatory. Mandatory. Because what are you doing? You're protecting the gene pool. Moving along. Another form of degenerate breeding, low IQ. Degenerate breeding produces low IQ. And low IQ, coincidentally, can produce degenerate breeding. So they go hand in hand. Let's get to it. Many studies have been done very recently showing, you see what it's saying? People are getting dumber. They've done studies after studies and done surveys showing that in many countries, especially in industrialized Western countries, the IQ rate is declining. Even though in many of these countries, they have the best, let me change that. They have all types of multi-million-dollar colleges, universities. Why is the IQ rate plummeting? I suggest, based on the evidence that we've gone over so far, it is absolutely tied to the mating system. It's also tied to the diet. It's also tied to the inbreeding, incest, or whatever people are doing, or the promiscuity. All of this is an accumulation. Remember, we read that, we talked about the accumulation, the accumulated effect earlier in evolution. That's the accumulation of what people have been doing. You're seeing it show up now in the IQ. That's the software. Mating is software and hardware. We just got done talking about the hardware, obesity. Now we're getting back to the software. So if the mating system is correct, and we're talking about the entire mating system, not just the people sleeping together producing a child. No, the entirety of the mating system, the IQ should stay relatively, healthy, whatever that IQ ratio is for that population. So we see the IQ now falling. So let's read this. So if IQ scores are really dropping, that could not only mean 15 more seasons of the Kardashians, but also the potential end of progress on all these other fronts, ultimately leading to fewer scientific breakthroughs, stagnant economies, and a general dimming of our collective future. The source on that, you'll see the source. So you can get the article. There's so many articles on this. I just picked one. So, don't think this is the only one. It's just a ton of them. IQ rates are dropping in many developed countries, and that doesn't bode well for humanity. So this is an example, yet again, it's building off of everything we've gone through so far, showing that the mating system in many, many, many societies and many cultures among many people in many nations is completely off kilter. And these are the effects. It's showing up in the intelligence, in the physical fitness, in the genetic, the features, and it's just going to accumulate and get worse for those that don't make the changes that are necessary. Moving along. Low IQ and high IQ. I didn't go into low IQ, but I just wanted to give an example. These are the countries right now that are rated in 2020 as having the highest IQ. Look at those countries carefully. You can learn a lot by looking at who's on the list and who's not on the list. Look closely. And this is the general IQ of the population, the group, not individuals, but the group. Look at who's on the list of the highest IQ. Look at it. Look closely. And look at who's not on the list. And we'll leave it at that. Common sense will give you all you need to know once you look at that list. So wise, intelligent people would then say, what are these people doing to keep their general group IQ that high? There you go. That's an intelligent person. What kind of mating practices are they utilizing to keep their IQ that high? That is an intelligent person. Those are the questions that intelligent people ask. Let's move on. Degenerate breeding, another expression or effect of degenerate breeding. And we're coming to an end. I apologize. I know we went on for a while.
No, I mean, people are still on. People still listen. People still asking questions. Before we get to that, one person stated, this is from Legitimate Processor again. He stated, let me see, bring it up. Oh, shucks. Slow moving phone. Hold on. He stated, can we include the age of women when it comes to degenerative pregnancy? I mean, when the fertility age is passed. That's what showed up.
Who was the person that? Well, it doesn't matter who was the person that asked that.
Legitimate Processor.
Absolutely. Okay. Yes, the age, the mating age, absolutely is a factor in whether a mating system is progressive or regressive. Absolutely. If the mating age is too young, the person would not have developed cognitively enough to be able to properly care for a child and parent a child. So if the mating age is too low, they can't parent a child. So it makes sense. It doesn't make any sense to have a low mating age for marriage. Additionally, their bodies may not be as developed enough to properly birth children. So that could result in death at pregnancy. So I'm just giving some generalities. So there's a low end, which is too low, and there's a high end, which is too old. So if a woman is too old, then she has a higher risk of not being able to get pregnant or not being able to bring a pregnancy to full term. There's an age limit on women's fertility. So too low, yes. Too high, yes. Either way is bad. You want to be right there, square in the middle. Square in the middle. So yes, that could be degenerate either way, too low or too high. Absolutely. And I might take a moment to mention this. We have a course, which is a comprehensive course. This course is called Selective Mating. And that course, for those that are serious and would like to get educated thoroughly and trained in selective mating for yourself, for your family, for your group, then you can enroll in that course. So that is, I'm just mentioning that, and I will give information at the end of the PowerPoint, which we're almost at the end, about how you can contact. But in summary, if you want to get the information about that course, just send an email to SOMAF, SOMAF, NGO @gmail.com. SOMAF, SOMAF, F is in Frank, SOMAF, NGO @gmail.com. And we will send you the link to that course. I'll also show the link at the end of this podcast. And also, you can also reach us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page for the SOMAF, which is the Society of Marriage and Family. And we'll be able to share the information with anyone that is interested in enrolling in the Selective Mating course that covers 10 times the amount of information you're seeing. Matter of fact, it covers 100 times the amount. This is just a condensed PowerPoint. But nonetheless, single parent homes. Let's show that's a form of degenerate breeding. Again, I'm not going to read all this. You get it. You'll see it. Study after study have been done. The single parent rate of children living in single parent households has skyrocketed. And in the United States and many Western cultures, it's just going higher and higher and higher because of this permissibility of random mating, sleeping around, premarital sex, extramarital sex, prostitution, whoredom, strip clubs, etc., etc. And now it's resulted in more children around the world and in many countries now only growing up with one parent, which is a form of child abuse because a child cannot develop fully just with one parent. That makes no sense. They can't be socialized and trained into a complete human being without both parents. So this article is just describing how bad it is getting. And I want you to look very close. Look at where it says it's highest. Now look at where it says it's lowest. 23%. It's more than this in the U.S., but nonetheless, 23% in the U.S. and 3% in China, 3%, 4% in Nigeria, 5% in India. Neighboring Canada, the share of children growing up in single-parent households is 15%. Automatically, this would tell us to some extent that in those countries, we could draw a conclusion, such as China, Nigeria, and India. Those are more traditional societies that practice non-random mating and more selective mating. The countries that have the highest rate, such as the US and Canada, of children growing up in single-parent households, those countries, without exception, have the highest practices of random mating, just like those dogs, multiple dogs chasing after that one female dog. None of this is by just falling out of the ether. This is all scientific. There's a reason why these rates of things are happening. It's the mating system. Let's continue on.
One quick question: would you also consider? Well, I guess it's a simple question, but the dumbing down of the American public, like the people are sheep. Like, I mean, the goofiness and the naivety of the American public today, the music that they listen to, the dumbed down music, the goofy hickory dickory dock, mouse ran up the clock music that they, but would you say that the dumbing down of the people or the generations today being dumbed down the way it is a result of what you termed earlier random mating or whoredom or cuckoldry or whatever you want to call it?
Yes, it is. Absolutely, it has to be. Culture is an expression of the people's intelligence. The clothing people wear is an expression of their intelligence. You can look at people and see who's intelligent by somewhat, for the most part, looking at their clothing. Now, let's pause on that. Did you remember any of those countries that were on the high IQ list?
Yes, sir. Yep.
And most of those were in Asia. Hong Kong,
Right.
Singapore, Taiwan, China, Japan. Are any of those countries known for walking around and having degenerate music or lyrics in their music?
No.
Are any of those countries I just named known for praising the single mother lifestyle?
No, not at all.
Are any of those countries known for praising or supporting or advocating or admiring criminals, drug dealers?
Not at all.
I rest my case. None of this is by happenstance. So to your point, yes, it is absolutely an effect of random mating, degenerate breeding is why you see the people. There was a little bit of
I don't know if y'all heard my background. That was a motorcycle.
No worries. Yes, to answer your question, yes, I would absolutely agree and concur. The reason why people are more quote unquote ignorant and dumb, and you see the things that they quote unquote like, that they call their preference, they call it this is our preference. No, that's because your IQ is low. That's why. And let me just go there, since we're going to get to that. Let me go, because people have this tendency of trying to equate everything. Oh, it's all relative. It's just likes and dislikes. No, it's not. Stop lying. How much IQ do you think it takes to create an orchestral music? How much IQ do you think it takes to get together an entire orchestra of musicians to create orchestral music? And look at the music that's being created today. How much IQ you think it takes to make some of this garbage they call music? It's not even a contest. So we're looking at just even music. It's not a contest. You create higher intelligence music, the more intelligent you are. The reason why a lot of the music in modern society is full of profanity and promoting sleeping with men's women and whoredom and strippers and drug dealing and criminality and just filth is because the people making the music are stupid. They're stupider and progressively stupider, and their IQ is dumber. And the people that listen to that type of music, yes, they're dumb too. They're dumbing their brains down by listening to stupid music made by stupid low IQ people. Yes.
Okay. Maham Neela said UK, I'm going to bring his comment up. He said UK is the only country on the list with high IQ that has many people from all around the world in it.
That's going to change. That's going to change. IQ will go down because whatever those practices were that made the group IQ, the general country IQ high, they have to be maintained. So if those practices were not maintained, meaning restrictive mating, selective mating, and all the other things, punishment of adultery, punishment of prostitution, prohibition of whoredom, if those practices are not maintained, Professor Unwin in his study found that civilization now is going to go backwards. So don't count on the UK staying there too long.
Okay. And Superhuman 37 says, we appreciate your time, Elder Wild Wolf.
Indeed, it's an honor and a privilege. I'm just grateful and thankful to be able to share and to be able to provide information, life-altering information for those that would take heed and listen. And again, for those that I want to mention again are interested, we definitely will be giving out the information yet again for those that would like to enroll in the selective mating course, because as I mentioned, the information you're seeing in this PowerPoint, it's not even a tenth of what that course has. That course, you exit that course with a complete selective mating system. It'll be like you're wearing binoculars and a telescope. Everybody else is just walking around blind. Nonetheless, is there another question, Brother Noor? Or
no, that's that's pretty much it for the questions. Yeah.
Sure. So, as is demonstrated in this graph, it has a ratio, global ratio, a global ratio of various countries that have ever increasing or various numbers of single parent households. The number of single parent households in a country or society is directly indicative of the type of mating system they're practicing. If a country has high ratios or a group of people, forget a country, if a particular group of people or a country or a nation has high numbers of single parent households, 100% without exception, that country or group of people are practicing random mating, degenerate breeding. Scientific, it's not up for debate. So nonetheless, as you can see, look at the countries that got the highest rate. US, 23%. Russia, 18%. Look at the countries that have the lowest rates of, Germany, 12%, France, 16%, Ireland, 14%, UK, 21%. Look at the countries that have the lower rates. Sao Tome, that's 19%, Nigeria, 4%, Mali, 1%, Pakistan, 6%, India, 5%, Japan, 7% of children in Japan growing up in single parent household. Vietnam, 4%. You get the point. So none of this is preference. People need to get the word out their mouth. Stop using the word preference. Stop it, because you are making a mistake. These things are scientifically grounded. Now, when you can talk about preferences, what is when you're doing things that are disrupting the mating system. Yeah, that's your preference because that's your individual behavior. But if we're talking about group mating behavior, talk about that. So this idea of, it's your it's my mate. They say, it's their mating system. Sleep around and be irresponsible and sleep with prostitutes and sleep with illegitimate children, and people are advocating this. No, that's you. That's you. You are committing genetic terrorism. You're a genetic terrorist against your own species. But I digress. I move on. And we're coming to a close. This is the course that I mentioned earlier, the SM Selective Mating course. And these are some of the things that course educates and trains people on. Individuals, men and women, children, young people, elders, leaders, community teachers, etc., government agencies, natural mate selection, natural selective mating, screening and sorting, selection and scaling, gene pool management, and special projects. You may not recognize some of that. Trust me, it is all that. So those are some of the main areas. There's many others, but essentially that course is a very comprehensive course that those that enter the course and exit it will come away with a world's difference. They will understand mating from a completely higher level perspective and be able to add that initiate that into your family, your community, your organization, your culture, your practice, whatever, and you'll get better results. You'll know how to identify the unfit at a much higher level. You'll know who's unfit as opposed to physiognomy or looking at people for how they look. You'll say, no, you look a certain way, but you're unfit in 10 other ways. So nonetheless, this is the course registration link. You can't see it here. What I'll probably do is I'll copy and paste it in the room. But I gave the email. If you want information about the course, you can email us, somafngo@gmail.com, or you can reach us on Facebook. The Facebook page is SOMAF, SOMAF, space SOMAF. That's the group page that we have, and request information about that course. There's many other courses dealing with marriage and family education, but this is definitely one of the most prominent ones that we have, specifically geared to selective mating, scientific mating. And we are at the end, so I will pause. And I know I went on for a while, so it was a journey. Hopefully, everybody learned some useful information that they could implement and also follow up. I urge everyone to follow up.
Oh yeah, that was beautiful. That was excellent. That was excellent. Excellent. You know, and I hope that everyone took notes. I hope that everyone also shares this as well. We're going to close this out with a few more questions. So I know everybody, we already went over our time, but we're going to make this quick. So, quick question: what brought you into the area of into the study of selective mating or practice of selective mating?
Sure. Well, great question. I became interested, or I've been interested in the area of selective mating for quite a few years, decades actually, and I have a very, very strong interest in. I think I mentioned at the top of the when we started the podcast, family mating systems. So I've spent years studying quite a few mating systems from different culture, from from actually pre-modern, medieval, modern, early modern, in many different societies from Europe, Mesoamerica, Far East, Near East, Middle East, Africa. And in studying these mating systems, initially it was about learning about how people form families, but then it took on just a whole nother dimension, because just like when you play chess, initially you think you're just playing chess. But as you play chess and you become more proficient, you start seeing things below the surface of the chessboard. It's not just the chess. You're looking into the actual genetics of what makes the people do what they do in terms of mating. So to answer your question, it's been quite a few years of study. And above all, I gotta say this, because I have to. I 100% firmly was influenced, because I knew when I formed a family, I wanted to select the highest quality candidate to mate with. I did not want to make the mistake of many people I've seen mate with the lowest quality individuals and produce dysgenic children. So that was a definite impetus on my behalf. I wanted to learn as much, and I'm still learning. I wanted to basically learn enough or more than anybody around me about mating and be able to use it in my household. And I use that right now. I use selective mating. That's what my mating system is, selective mating. Hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, yeah, that definitely answered the question. I'm gonna ask, let me see, it's a couple of more questions. The majority of the following questions you already answered in your presentation. So I'm just gonna touch a couple of more, and then one that we discussed prior to this podcast that you wanted me to bring up. Sure. But next question is, do you believe that eugenics or selective mating has been or is being used against the original / aboriginal / melanin dominant people of the planet Earth? If yes, then how?
Well, that's a great question. Mating is competition. We started off, I think, at some point in the podcast, we talked about that. The gentleman had asked the question, is that a form of war, disrupting somebody's mating system? Of course it is. So it's war, and you have to compete for everything in an environment. Do lions have to compete with hyenas? Of course they do. Of course. So we want to let's expand that question. Eugenic or selective mating is being used against all groups in one way or another. What do you think sex tourism is? Sex tourism is one group of people going to another group of people and prostituting their women on vacation and dumping their genetic waste and trash in the wombs of those women that they go in the other country of another group of foreign men. Of course, they just call it sex tourism, but no, it's war. So it's all groups. All groups are constantly in a state of competition for resources, for women, you name it. Right now, I'm just giving it just as blunt so we can expand this. China limited its population for decades, the majority of its population, to one child. That caused a disruption in the Chinese population, where now they have more males than females in the Chinese population. That's completely unnatural. So guess what it's forcing a lot of Chinese men to do now? They now are going to other groups and countries around them that are in the general area of the Far East or Southeast and trying to get wives. Don't you know that's disrupting those men's ability to mate in their countries now? Do you get what I'm saying now?
Yes, sir.
So the question is not just is selective mating, can that be weaponized against one group? That's being used by many people against each other. Mating is competition, it's war. So the larger question is, I'm throwing the question back. Are you training for war? Are you training for mating war? That is the question. The war is going to be there. Are you training and getting good at mating war? That is the question. That's the answer to that question.
Could this also tie into when historically, when we see conquering armies invade other nations, what they would do is rape and or make whores out of the women of that conquered nation to weaken them?
The greatest form of conquest is to disrupt a group's mating system, because you disrupt their ability to reproduce themselves and to oppose you. That is the most lasting way of conquering any group. Disrupt their mating system. Once you disrupt their mating system, they cannot reproduce themselves in their original state. So they can't ever oppose you.
To the Instagram generation, y'all Instagram models, and these brothers that love these Instagram models, you know, just pay attention. What you're practicing, you're showing the world is that you're a conquered people. You know what I'm saying? Please listen to this podcast, re-listen to it, take notes, and also follow the instructions given at the end of it. Brother Wild Wolf, I believe that the link did show up on the screen.
Yes, sir.
It showed up on my screen. But like I said, anytime, feel free to show it again. I'll share it on my Facebook and on my YouTube channel.
I'll pull it back up. The link for the course.
Right.
Okay, I'll pull it back up. I'll just put it back up. Give me a second. I'm gonna just pull it back up. There you go. Okay, is it back up?
Yeah. Wait.
Okay.
Yeah, there it is.
Sure. Now, to the point that was just made, yes, the greatest form of war is to disrupt a group's mating system. You could beat people with bullets, bombs, swords, knives. They can always reconstitute themselves to the mating system and come back. You disrupt their mating system, it is over and finito. So
let's see.
Many.
You there?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah. I actually was out. It actually kicked me out, and I just got back in. So yeah.
Yes, sir.
I'm back.
So now to the point, many people, you said something earlier that was very prominent, Brother Noah. Many people, and this is going to be some harsh reality, but people need harsh reality. No more lies. Many people mistakenly believe the mating choices that they're making are their own. It's their preference. No, it's because you were bred to make that type of mating choice. Your genes that's been passed on to you has a great amount of influence on who you find attractive. So a lot of people don't realize that due to the way their parents mated, due to the IQ capacity that's been passed on to them, due to the dietary practices, just due to the genetics being passed on, all of that has a tremendous influence in who they find allegedly attractive. So a lot of people are thinking in their mind, they're consciously choosing certain people, and you're not. You're just programmed to choose them. And to show you that you're programmed, many people choose the most dysfunctional people to marry and mate and actually think it's their choice. No, you're not. You're just a brainwashed zombie that isn't in control. A person that's in control, let's be very clear, is one that only chooses to mate with the highest and the most fittest candidate that could reproduce the superior children. That is the person that's in control, because you would reject any unfit person to mate with. You're not controlled by poor impulse or low impulse or no impulse or random mating. You know that can destroy your species. So you put your species above you. So there's this idea people have, as I said, they talk about preference or what they like. Who cares what you like? It's about the species. Nobody cares what you like. We don't have to care what you like. Your group, whoever your group is, doesn't have to care or concern themselves with what you like. And that's why fathers in traditional cultures were given the responsibility of choosing and arranging marriage for their children, because fathers were viewed, intelligent fathers anyway, as the ones that could put aside emotion and feelings and make the choice that's best for the species, not for feelings.
That's real. That's real. Okay. And there's one more point that we discussed before this podcast that you wanted me to bring up. It's not getting away from the subject. It actually is dealing with the subject. But I had mentioned how when the subject of polygyny comes up, that there are brothers who say or believe that the purpose for polygyny is to quote unquote clean up the hood, or to clean up, like brothers who say, oh, it's a whole bunch of unmarried women, single mothers with a bunch of children that need men this and need men for that, and they need male guidance. So we're going to have to do polygyny one day because every woman has to be covered, and et cetera, et cetera. In other words, clean up the hood. And they believe that that's what polygyny is for. And you brought up a point for that, and you asked me to bring it up on the podcast because you wanted to address that point to the public with what you mentioned before. So if you don't mind, would you please share the point or that what you wanted to address that point with the public?
Thank you. Exactly. Yes. Those that say every woman deserves a husband are insane. They're mentally insane.
Right.
That's the same as saying every man deserves a wife. Sometimes you want to use in-depth, legal, scientific language to address certain things. Sometimes you just have to make it plain. That's equivalent to saying everybody should be an airline pilot. Everybody's not competent enough to be a wife. All women are not competent enough to be a wife. All women are not fit enough to be a wife. All women are not genetically fit to have children. All women are not mentally fit to be in a marriage. So the idea is a very low IQ idea that historical, or shall we say it right, scientific mating systems, and I'm including polygyny. I'll get to that in a second. It's a very low IQ belief or idea that mating systems are designed to make sure every woman gets a husband. That's insane. That's insane. That's the opposite of selective mating. The idea that every woman deserves a husband is sexual communism. It's the epitome of now you drop all the rules just so everybody can pass. So why run a race? We might just say, look, everybody get a medal. That's 4th place medal. Let's just hand out 5th place medals.
Right.
Now you've eradicated standards by saying every woman deserves a husband. It's ridiculous. So that's what low IQ individuals usually say because they have no clue about scientific mating systems and how they produce stronger, better generations. That's my first point. My second point now is this. Monogamy, just like polygyny, from what most understand, is not a mating system. Many people make the error due to ignorance and just sometimes due to plain stupidity, as if to say, oh, they are polygynous or they are monogynous or whatever, and think that is evidence of a mating system. You don't know that many of those voicing of those things, they don't have 0.01% of what an actual mating system is. As I mentioned, a car has 4 wheels. Is that evidence of a car? Is 4 wheels enough to constitute a car? No. So a mating system is more than just having more than one wife. There's other components that make a mating system that if those things are in place, it doesn't matter. You can have 100 women. It won't make a difference. You'll start getting the genetic defects that we saw in this PowerPoint. Yeah. So illiteracy is rampant, more than likely among people that share that idea that quote unquote polygyny, scientific or historic or cultural polygyny, the purpose was to make sure every woman had a husband. It's so unscientific, I don't know what to say. But nonetheless, getting back to the second point, no, that's not what polygyny is for. Polygyny is a part of a mating system. That's the better way to say it. Monogamy is a part of a mating system. They by themselves are not mating systems. And in order for any mating system to produce superior and progressively stronger and healthier progeny, it has to be attached to the other components. And it has to be restrictive. So even under monogamy, let's go there. Every woman does not deserve a husband, even under monogamy, because every woman is not genetically fit. Every woman is not cognitively fit. Every woman is not domestically fit. So not just with polygyny is that a scientifically erroneous statement, it's also an erroneous statement with any mating system, monogamy included. The only people that are fit, remember, we're talking about a meritocracy. Earlier, I gave out some of the components of what makes a society genetically strong. And meritocracy is one. You earn the right. So meritocracy is how you would divvy up who gets the privilege, not a right, privilege of mating. The strongest, the fittest, physically fittest, the genetically healthiest. Those are some components of who, quote unquote, deserves, or should I say, earn the right to mating. Just saying every woman, female with a vagina deserves a husband. How insane is that? It's a slap in the face, but it shows a low IQ of that's being, that's exhibiting itself in a lot of these discussions. But hopefully I didn't run on too long, but no, that's insanity. That's not how mating systems work. Just saying, hey, just everybody just go ahead and mate. You feeling aroused.
Right.
Yeah. That's low IQ.
It is, and I don't think polygyny is not to be used as a mop to mop up filth. You know what I'm saying? Because you're going to take that filth and put it right in the bucket, the gene pool, and you're going to destroy and collapse your gene pool with that mentality. But that's usually simps and simpish brothers, particularly that become woke or get knowledge of self, so to speak. And they figure, they're still in that simp stuff. So they figure, oh, but what about our sisters and all the single mothers with the children and who's going to help? I mean, that's the responsibility of the brothers who did all that. You know what I'm saying? And those women, you know what I mean?
Let's go further. Let's go down this rabbit hole to its eventual conclusion. So all female rapists deserve a husband. Let's keep going. All female sex. I'm just saying. Let's do it. So all female domestic abusers deserve a husband. Let's keep going. We don't need to stop. So all women that don't know how to clean up a house and cook and clean and maintain a children deserve a husband. We could just keep going.
Right.
So as you said, what will happen if people adopt sexual communism, which is random mating? What's going to happen is you're going to spread and disperse those dysgenic and degenerate breeding habits over a wider area. Now you're definitely going to increase the possibility of causing your gene pool to go extinct. Now you increase the opportunity for the defective ones to spread their degenerate genes. That's insanity. That's insanity. And it shows, I might add, it shows how low standards people that hold that position are. They're demonstrating how low their standards are, meaning second place medal, third place medal, fourth place medal. Hey, you went out there and had 2,000 venereal diseases. Oh, come on, you deserve a mate. Come on right now.
Right.
You had 200, you had 10 children by 10 different men. Oh, come on, don't worry. You can get the 10th place medal over here. You deserve a husband. Oh, you were a prostitute for many years, 20 years. Oh, destroyed, sexually ruined yourself. Come on over. You deserve a husband. That's insanity. So this is what individuals like that are proposing is genetic terrorism.
Right.
They're literally proposing to do away with the restrictive laws of mating and to then adopt what? A love mating ethos, which is what you see going on in the Western society and many of these modern societies. Not scientific mating, not mating based on nature, not mating based on logic, not mating based on natural law, not mating based on law. No, they're actually promoting love mating, which is what? Another form of random mating. And that type of mating entails feelings, compassion, love, empathy. In other words, that's a female, that's a degenerate female type mentality of me. I'm not going to even call it female. I'll call it degenerate female strategy. It lowers the bar. There's no standards. Anything that lowers the mating standards is genetic terrorism. It's genetic suicide. So masculine mating, masculine strategy of mating is mating that's based on nature, science, natural law, logic.
Right.
Feminine type mating or degenerate feminine mating is what? Mating that's based on feelings, love, emotional love, I might add, or whatever they call. Let me just say that right. Emotional, whatever they call love, compassion, empathy, even though it's going to destroy your gene pool. No, everybody doesn't deserve a mate. All women do not deserve a husband. Many women and men deserve to be quarantined. They deserve to be socially distanced from the gene pool. They've already proven their unfitness by the choices they've made. Prostitutes do not deserve a husband. Whores do not deserve a husband. Pimps do not deserve a wife. Whoremongers don't deserve a wife. Rapists don't deserve a wife. And the list goes on. Sex offenders do not deserve a spouse. They deserve to be deboed, disowned, exiled, banished, and outcasted. Hopefully that answers that question. Can you hear me, Brother Noor?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Hold on. Okay, Brother Wild Wolf.
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, it kicked me out again. Okay, yeah. But yeah, as you were saying now, because we're gonna soon conclude this. Sure. But you were saying now, sorry about that.
No worries. I was just wrapping it up by mentioning the illogicity and the absolute low IQ stupidity of the statement by summarizing it as follows. Prostitutes don't deserve a husband.
Right.
Whores don't deserve a husband.
Right.
Used property, public property females, promiscuous females don't deserve a husband.
Right.
Pimps don't deserve a wife.
Right.
Whoremongers don't deserve a wife.
Right.
Rapists don't deserve a wife.
Right.
Pedophiles don't deserve a spouse.
Correct.
Child abusers don't deserve marriage. They deserve all of the categories I just mentioned and others that fall within the degenerate breeding. They deserve to be deboed,
Right.
disowned, exiled, banished, and outcasted.
Right. Agreed. Agreed. Are you there, Brother Wild Wolf?
Indeed.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, all right. Yeah, okay. Well, this was definitely quite informative. It was also inspirational. I appreciate everybody in the audience who participated. I had a few technical difficulties on my Facebook page, so it didn't stream live on my Facebook page, although I shared the stream from YouTube on my Facebook, and therefore people were able to look on that. I will have that taken care of and fixed for the next time, but we can still, this is being recorded and streamed live for YouTube, so the video can be shared directly from the YouTube channel and platform. But I want to appreciate Brother Wild Wolf, Director Z, for his time, his research, his information, his knowledge, and him willing to share that with us, because somebody or somebodies are going to benefit from it today. More people are going to hear this, and more this is going to be shared, and people are going to talk about this to other people, and it's going to spread eventually. And those who are meant to benefit from it will do so. You know, everybody, make sure you go and check out that link that was shared, that Brother Wild will share near the end of the broadcast, about the selective mating course and education. This podcast is brought to you by our sponsors at www.supremeherbalhealing.com, as well as www.supremegoldsavings.com. We strive to put supremacy on everything that we do. As a group, we are working, we're in the process of training and credentializing our own healers and herbalists, holistic herbalists. Brother Wild Wolf, or Director Z, also has, if he cares to share, what is it, ancestral, a program called Ancestral Burial, where he offers natural, affordable burial services for anyone who seeks to utilize it. He also has a course that teaches and trains people in that same area of natural, organic, green, affordable burial. So again, if you can share, if you don't mind sharing for one more time, Brother Wild Wolf, your contact information for anyone who has questions or wants more information about wants more details about any of the information that you offered or the programs that you offered, feel free to share one more time.
Indeed, thank you, and much thanks again and appreciation for the opportunity to share, participate in the podcast. For those that are interested in learning more and getting education and training in selective mating, you can reach out to us. We have a course, Selective Mating 7001. You can reach out to us at the link that's being shared on the screen, where you can fill out the registration form. And also you can reach out to us at SOMAF, SOMAF with an F, NGO@gmail.com, SOMAFNGO@gmail.com. Or you can find us on Facebook. We have a private page, a personal page, and also a group page under SOMAF, SOMAF space SOMAF. and we have a group page under that also. And in that way you can get the information about the course, the Selective Mating course. We have quite a few other courses because we have a Marriage and Family Academy, but I won't go into all that. You reach out to us, you can get information about all of the marriage and family courses that we also offer in addition to the Selective Mating.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that, Brother Wild Wolf. And I'm going to close on this note right here, right? The first law of life is self-preservation. Included in the definition or the concept of self-preservation is reproduction. That's part of self-preservation. That is the first law of life. And because that is the first law of life, even if we look for those that hold the Bible in sacred regards, that's the first commandment that was given to the people, the first man, be fruitful and multiply, right? So because that is the first law of life, this is why the urge or the sexual desire is probably the most powerful and motivating desire there is. And if it is not controlled, if it is not organized, if it is not structured properly, the same thing that leads to self-preservation and reproduction, it could also do the reverse. It could lead to self-degradation, self-destruction, and death and decay. This is if it's not under control, if it's not under contract. Another term for contract is marriage. I'm not here to promote or speak against state marriage or cultural marriage, any which way. If I'm speaking about structure, however which way you do it, if it's not under structure, if the laws of sex and reproduction is not structured, if it's not organized, it can and will lead to chaos and destruction. All we have to do is look at the histories of Roman Empire, of the Persian Empire, all these great empires, even this American empire that we see today, and see what led to its implosion and collapse. We'll all see the same pattern, is that the people or the public became degenerate, and they became, as we would say, they began practicing random mating, random mate selection, just random mating, just all over the place. The prostitution, the whoredoms, the cuckoldry, all the things associated with random mating. And if organized and put under structure, if it's organized and put in structure, it can lead to will lead to the advancement and the elevation of a society. I want everybody to think about that long and hard. And with that being said, we're going to close out again. Thanks to Brother Wild Wolf, Director Z. If you want to say anything else you want to add, if not, we're going to just close out here.
Indeed. Thank you again for the opportunity and very great words that you gave at the end. So just as you have mentioned, it's a matter of life or death. So it's not an individual choice. Mating is not a recreational activity. It is to ensure the survival of each species. So think of it as that and act accordingly in every way with all mate selection for that which ensures the survival of your species to the highest capacity.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Appreciate that. Okay, so on that note, can you hear me, Brother Wild Wolf?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, okay. On that note, it looks like the screen froze, but we're going to end it anyway. So with that said, everybody, peace, and share, like, comment, subscribe, share the video, and be on the lookout for the next podcast. I'll be making an announcement soon. Peace.